Alan Anderson, born 1934. Graduated from Topeka High School. Presently, I live in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas, and Mission, Kansas, up there.
My name is Claude Lee. I was born here in Wichita in 1936, but I went to high school in Denver, South High Denver, and when I went to a junior college in Iowa for 2 years, then I came to Wichita University. I keep trying to say Wichita State, but it's not Wichita State then, it was Wichita University at the time. And I found it to be a great university.
Oh, in high school I participated in band, orchestra, marching band, pep band, in our physics club in high school, and we had a dance band. I had a dance band in high school all 3 years, and so we played at varsity after football and basketball games. So dating in high school was almost none, because I was up there playing while all the girls were hugging somebody else dancing. I didn't get to do that. So. But it was a great experience.
Well, my activities in high school were quite different. I was basically track and field. And I'm proud to say that I was all city in Denver, and then was planning to go on to Wichita University until at the last minute I decided to go to my church college in Iowa, Phi Epsilon College in Alumni, Iowa. And that's where I went for 2 years before I came to Wichita University, excuse me.
Well, being a resident here, for one thing, it was cheap. I mean, like I said, we lived over there by 13th and Oliver, and it was a municipally owned university at that time, so tuition was very reasonable. And keeping my music from high school over here to Wichita U, I played with Pop Dirksen, as we called him, at the symphony. I played with the orchestra here at Wichita U, and you know, it was convenient. It was home. We had a lot of fun on the campus, and we went to the Alibi Club. Is that still there? I don't know whether it is or not, but it was underneath the auditorium, and that's where the student union was then. At that time, it's called the Alibi Club. For whatever reason.
Wilner Auditorium?
The one right here on Fairlawn going in on the south side.
Okay.
Or on the west side there of Fairlawn.
Well, mine was a quite different reason. Of course, I went to high school, as I said, in Denver, and went off to junior college. But while I was at junior college, my folks moved back to Wichita, so that when I got through with my first 2 years in college, well, I had to come here because that's where they were. And it was a local university, and that's where I was going to go.
I majored in business. I first started out to be a band director, and I thought, I don't know about longevity and schools and everything else, so I ended up in being a business major. And of course, one of the things out here was like Fran Javera and some of those who taught accounting and the business courses. It was really, I thought of an excellent, probably still is a really good business college here off their programs, or benefited much from the classrooms I had here at Wichita U.
In my case, well, in junior college, I majored in secondary education because I thought I wanted to be a high school teacher. But I got sort of tired of that after the first 2 years, so when I came here, I majored in economics, because then I was more interested in the subject matter than I was in the tactics of teaching. And after the first year here, I changed to poli-sci, political science, and I knew a lot of the professors, and it was just from the old days, because politics is my hobby, you might say. So I got involved with them too. Graduated with a major in poli-sci.
Well, I guess when I pledged and went through Pledge Week, went to visit all the different ones, Webster and SIGs, and then over on Hillside. I don't remember all the fraternities' names at that time, but I don't know, I just kind of liked the camaraderie that we had with the guys. More of an academic fraternity than a party fraternity. And Pop said, you better study instead of play, so, you know. So ended up here, and And as I mentioned earlier, the little fraternity house was about the size of a Dairy Queen, so we were known as a Dairy Queen fraternity on the campus up here because of our size over here on Vassar, well, where you are now, actually. But just a great bunch of guys, and over the years we've stayed together, and I made the right choice.
In my case, it was quite different. Because of politics being in my family and in my blood, I guess you might say, when I came to campus, there was just a group of people called, well, they were organizing a campus political party called BPOC, or Better Politics on Campus. And they were running against the entrenched organization, which were basically run by the fraternity of the older fraternities and sororities locally. So a friend of mine named Jerry Cole was organizing the other side. He was organizing on behalf of the old party. So I helped organize the young party called Better Politics on Campus. And we had a heck of a good campaign, and we basically took over the student government that year and became the ruling force, quote unquote, of the student government. And then I wrote the constitution of the student government, a bunch of stuff, and just enjoyed the heck out of it. Then when the Greek thing happened and they were getting ready to organize all of the nationals, why, they asked some of us in the BPOC to help with the Phi Epsilon group that was a little bit on the weaker side, and we said we're going to come with the nationals, and we need to have equally strong organizations. So we jumped in and did what one of my professors asked us to do, that is to get involved with the organization. None of the group that I was involved with in Phi Alpha Pi were connected with the Greeks, the local Greeks or the early Greeks. And so we were happy to do it, and we'd love to do it, and we jumped in and got organized and had a great time with Phi Alpha.
52 to 54, I had chosen a career as being a funeral director or embalmer, whatever. And so our pre-licensing was 2 years of college and then a year at mortuary school. And that's my term as 52 to 54. So I didn't stay here and graduate in my class of 56, but being an active, I stayed in touch with many friends, and later on ended up owning a funeral home in Lynchburg, Kansas for 40-some years. But keep in touch with the fellows here, Bob Lakin, who was city clerk down here, and called him up every once in a while about politics and stuff. So that was my term as far as classroom and years here at Wichita U. Well, they had a darn good file, and a lot of professors was testing them, and how else did you think we got through class? I mean, it worked. I mean, you guys do the same thing today, I'm sure. But anyway, we had a good file in a lot of the classes. A lot of the fraternity brothers were business majors and other in there. But part of it was, again, it was a small fraternity. We didn't have any dorms or anything. And you could always walk in the back door and there'd be a bridge game going on or something, and you could participate. But I just enjoyed the fraternity. Our sponsor was a professor who taught English by the name of Dr. Moody. And we had another person there named Gossett. His mother was a professor of English in the fraternity, or in the college here too at the time. So it just fit my personality and my group of people that I'm with, and the file was wonderful.
Well, in my case, one of the stories I'm going to tell you later is kind of long and drawn out. But the fact of the matter is that I wouldn't have graduated without the Phi Alpha. I can tell you that in now, or I can tell you later when you get around to the other stories, but it was very, obviously critical, absolutely critical to my graduation. I wouldn't have graduated without it. That just seems strange, but it's true. Do you want me to tell about that now? Well, the university professors, the president and all of the rest of them, Dr. Sowers and some of the rest, the ones I knew, they were very careful to make sure that none of the major fraternities who came to the campus at this time were, excuse me, were racially and religiously discriminatory. And they went through all of the rules that they all had to make sure that there were no race and religious rules about that. Well, of course, it didn't take us all long to find out that even though the open or public rules did not, the ones who came, including Zia, did not have those, they all had private rules. That is, you just didn't do it. You know, you didn't race, you didn't rush African Americans, and you didn't rush Jewish people. Just was one of the things. It's hard to believe that they were openly that way in those days, but they were. And so it took us long. Didn't take us long to figure that out. So I was on the student government then. I was vice president of the student body, and so I proposed that we write a letter. And I felt very strongly about the discriminatory question. So I proposed that the student government write a letter to all of the national organizations of all the ones who are coming on campus, and ask them to give the leave to the locals here, regardless of what their national policies were, to give leave to the locals to rush without regard to race or religion. And this was on the agenda for the student body organization in 1 week. Well, the poop hit the fan, frankly. There was a newspaper article in the Eagle Beacon about it, with a picture of me in it even, and which wasn't my intent, of course. I just wanted to do what I just said, but came up, all of the professors who were involved in making sure that none of the ones who had open rules about that, they were the ones that felt like I sort of screwed them, to make the story. They were very unhappy with me, and of course, almost all the other people were unhappy. I know every time I'd walk through the student union, that happened to run into me, you know. Same thing happened with my girlfriend, who later became my wife. She got a lot of hassle about that. And I was just kind of unpopular for a while there. But at the following meeting of the student government, it passed to send out this letter. Well, when it came to graduation, my grades were okay. I had probably A-, B+ average, but foreign languages were my weakest, very weakest, or sad. I'd taken French in high school, flunked it, or I definitely flunked it, I got a D, and since I was a liberal arts major, I had to take French or some foreign language here at the university to graduate. It's part of my basic skills. So I was in my last semester, I was taking French. Well, I did poorly. I was doing very poorly. And then it came down to the final exam. And I sort of eked my way through that and had my fingers crossed. And lo and behold, I passed, so I could graduate. That summer, say a month or so after graduation, I ran into my French teacher at some social thing. And I went up to him and I said, "Say, I must have done better on that final than I thought I did." And he says, "You flunked it flatter than flatter." And I says, "Well, how come I graduated? How come that happened? I couldn't have graduated without French." He said, "Well," he said, "I went to the university president. I think his name now.
Corbin?
Harry Corbin.
Corbin, yes. I went to see President Corbin at his home. And I said, "Well, President, I'm sorry to say I've got this one guy who's not going to graduate because he didn't meet the language requirement in my French class. He failed French." And Harry Corbin, he said, this is what he said. Harry Corbin stroked his chin for a minute, walked over to a window, looked out for a minute, came back, stroked his chin some more, and said, this is a direct quote, "Get that son of a bitch out of here." And so I graduated. Hadn't been for all of that and the racial thing and cigarette, apple pie. I would not have graduated that year. I'd just been flunking around, sitting around for another semester, taking French or something over and over and over again. Probably wouldn't have ever graduated, because I would probably never would have passed that foreign language. So I have that to thank apple pie and cigarette for. I wouldn't have graduated then, and maybe not at all.
Well, we went to NIT one year. That's when the Carney boys were playing. And at that time, the basketball was played down at the old municipal auditorium, which is no longer there. But they were steel girders and old benches in there, and it was basically kind of a snake pit because you were sitting right on top of the basketball court down there. And probably known to some of you, but at that time, Oklahoma State was part of the Missouri Valley before they moved out and went into the Big 8 at that time. And I remember one time, my wife, or the time wasn't, but we went down to Oklahoma State and played basketball. And we won in overtime. And the Oklahoma State fans were unkindly to us, to say the least. And my girlfriend or wife-to-be later on got in a fight with a couple of women where we had to get out the back door in a hurry. But other events, we really didn't have much events going on here in the early 50s. It's pretty quiet. No controversial that I can recall anyway of anything on campus. And it was just a fun place to be in college at that time. It really was.
Well, for me, it was, I didn't know anything about a fraternity, college fraternity. And so it was all educational to me, very, very much so. I remember, of course I remember the elections. My friend Jerry Cole, his habit was, we all put up signs on the campus, on trees and so on, and they let us put them up just for a week or two. And he used to go around and tear everybody else's signs down except his. And I had a lot of fun with him about that. But on the fraternity side, I just remember how nice everyone was. That's the thing I remember. We were very good among each other. We didn't dislike anybody. We did a lot of brushing, and we loved all of the brushes, and we got a lot of good people coming in on the brush. My mother and my girlfriend then, who's my wife now, Fran Lee, then Fran Snow. My mother and another woman, another mother, Don Root. I don't know if some of you know Don Root or not, but he's a great guy, one of my oldest friends. His mother and my mother and Fran came over and made all the lunches several times a week over at the old Phi Epsilon house. And that was great. And they just did it because they wanted to, because they believed in the warmth and the stability of the fraternity on the campus. And the thing I remember the most was the real fellowship and fidelity of the people who were these Phi Alps, later to be the Sig Eps. Oh, I remember one trip when we were rushing, we were seeing about the national organization. We went to Colorado Springs, and although I'd been in Denver all those years, I'd never been to the big house, the big hotel in Colorado Springs. I think the name of it now. We went there and stayed at the. Anybody remember the name of that hotel?
You had two. You had the Broadmoor or the Antlers.
The Broadmoor. I'd never stayed at the Broadmoor before. I stayed at the Broadmoor for the Sig Ep thing, and we had a big organizational meeting about that. And did you go to that one? Oh, you didn't go to that one, did you? To the Broadmoor?
Sir, I was out of here in '54.
Oh, okay. And so, anyway, that was a great experience. And going to the Broadmoor. And there was a nice princess who skated, who was nationally well-known Olympic champ. She was skating over there. I watched her skate. That was a big experience too. She was really a beautiful girl. So that's about it. I really learned something about the big positive. It wasn't just all parties and fooling around. It was a lot of very positive things, whether it was academics or fellowship or making you feel at home away from home. And I really loved that part.
Well, just thinking what you said of 1,200 members and the original Pi Alpha, starting back in the 40s up till 57 or so when they returned, our numbers are dwindling fast. And we get together once a year and tell stories and catch up on family, and now we're into great-grandkids, and that's even scary too. But I think the main thing that I get out of it is just a bunch of us old guys getting together and having fun. And whether the Sig Ep group is so large that you don't get together as a group, I don't know. But since we're a small group, we hang together and we still talk and email each other all the time. I guess that is one of the things that we have enjoyed. I hope as your group goes along, and I guess you go by numbers, here's your graduation date or something, or we're still names, we're not numbers yet. But I would say keep together, have your class that you graduate with, stay together, get together once in a while and share experiences and where you're at and what's going on in your life. That to me is important, and you build memories that way. That's what I like.
Well, my feeling is this, that just like any organization, it can either be a positive experience or a negative experience. And what I mean by positive is that it can be a series of events which you take good from it and you give good back. It's not just a drinking committee, club, or just to seeing how many rules you can break and screw around and still get this or that. But it's an organization about helping guys come in, go through college, helping them be stronger. And I'm writing a couple of books right now. One of them's called The Golden Rule of Politics. Everybody does better when everybody does better. And another one I'm writing is The Golden Rule of the Workplace. Because I was an administrative judge for the Department of Labor for 30-some odd years. And I learned by managing my people, my staff and all the rest, that you've got to treat them right in order for them to produce. It's not so much a matter of pay, it's a matter of humaneness. And the same is true in a fraternity. You've got to take the little guys who are little when they come as freshmen. By little I just mean you know, big-eyed and, my God, this is college, and what am I doing here, and so on and so forth. You've got to make them feel like human beings and grown-ups and students and good men and women. And so-called the golden rule of fraternity life, and everybody does better when everybody does better. It's not us versus them, it's not the seniors versus the new guys, and making them feel small for some way, like some fraternities and organizations can do. You make them feel big. You make them feel stronger. You make them feel wonderfully glad that they're there. And as he said, they become friends for life. Kurt DeGree, who is out here right now, my wife and I got married, and about the same time we graduated, and Kurt was my best man. And I still see him today. He's a lovely, he's a great guy. And I love seeing him. And the ones that I haven't seen all these years, I can't tell you how much I love seeing them. I'm glad I am for this group here. Now I live in Topeka, and so I'm not around Wichita State University much anymore, but I get together for this thing and other things that I've been here before. It's just a life warming experience. And that's what you got to do, is you got to make it that from the first day, and take in these new people, these new kids, the new Rashis, or whatever you call them, and make them glad that they're there, and make them your buddies and friends for life. If you do that, it'll just be as good a thing as going to school. The good outcome is going to school itself would be. That's the size of it.
I was the only pledge that made active a year in '53. So, since I was the only one that made active or pledge, why, I got to stand downtown on Douglas Avenue with a t-shirt and a tin cup and pencils and beg for money. Dave Johnston was a fraternity, and his father was chief of police here, and so we grabbed him one night and handcuffed him to a parking meter, and Dad came over, one of the guys came over and handcuffed him. So that was kind of some of the things we did. If you look at the mementos that I brought with you, each paddle or each name on the paddle represents at least one slot or more, and it was kind of Board of Education, you might say. You said, "Thank you, sir, may I have another one?" And of course they obliged in most cases. Seriousness, at the time here at Wichita U and the campus, it was a fun place to be. Education was #1 priority with Phi Alpha, which I enjoyed very much and benefited from it. So the serious side and the humorous side is of the fraternity I enjoyed, and still have a lot of memories from it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to.
Thank you.
Should be.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Tell these stories. They'll be about 90% true.
90, that's a high.
It's pretty high. Yeah.
Nice to have that.
Ed Thompson, Edward J. Thompson, number 26, went to North High School in Wichita, was here from 1954 to 1959 when I was graduating.
Yeah, I'm Curtis LeGree, and I went to Newton High School, and I graduated there in '54, came down here and graduated in Wichita U at '59, and I continued on. I got a master's in '64. I was in school engineering down here, and I was a SIG app for a whole month before I graduated, because we had made the collection, put together the proposal and everything to SIG app, and we were colony, and then we went SIG app just about a month before I graduated.
I'm Bob Kressler. I also am from Newton, Kansas. I graduated from Newton in the class of 1956, which is one of the finest classes that ever came out of there, basketball-wise.
Oh, now you're lying.
Yeah. I don't know if too many people know it, but it was politics that got this house going. There was a political party,
DPOC.
Better Politics on Campus. Claude Lee was the founder of that, and the Phi of the Pies had gone under. And the university contacted Claude Lee and asked him if he would like to take over the house for his political party, and he says, "Oh, you bet." And Claude did, and that's how we got started.
How we all got together.
And I don't know if that's if that's a widely known belief or not, but that's how we got started.
I think that all the guys, when they asked Claude, but there was a whole bunch of us that kind of worked the BPOC.
That's right.
And we all came in here about the same time.
He contacted others who contacted others.
Yeah.
There was another key name that I think is forgotten, and it really shouldn't be, and it's Carl Fidel.
Oh, yeah.
And Carl Fidel's family owned a house about four
Block and a half.
Block and a half,
Yeah.
2 blocks.
south of here.
And that was that's where many of us lived, and it became our first bed and breakfast kind of a place.
It was called the Annex.
The annex.
Jordan Friedel, who is Carl Friedel's grandson,
Yes,
is
right.
an undergraduate member.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I hope you know.
He and my grandson did the Hippodrome.
And I don't know if this is the time, but I think there's one other guy that isn't with us anymore, by the name of John Potts.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And Potts is probably the guy, of course we went to see him. He came from Missouri at the, in Springfield, I can't think of the name of the college over there. He came over here to the music school, and he had been a SIG Ep. And he's living in the house with us down there at what we call the Annex. And he drummed a lot of SIG Ep into our heads.
Yeah, and it took 4 or 5 of us over to the SIG Ep chapter in Missouri to show us what a fraternity was really like. And we were blown away.
Yeah.
Just
And he lobbied us heavily.
Heavily.
For SIG Ep.
That's right. Yeah.
We interviewed other fraternities. I think want to say Pi Kappa.
I'm not sure which they were, but
And some of us, or some of them, us, were kind of leaning toward that, and John came through.
yeah.
He delivered the goods.
I lived here already, so why not? It was handy.
And I think I came out of high school and I was looking for a school taught engineering, and that's about the time that the aerospace engineering out here was really getting started. They had a new professor out here that was Razak, I think was his name. And I ended up being in aeronautics for a couple of years, and then I ended up being a mechanical engineer. But it didn't make any difference. The schools were all good.
I think I came because it was close. I had strong ties with the people and good friends in Newton. And I just didn't want to get too far away from home. And I obviously fell in love with it.
Well, I was looking for a group of men with whom I could identify. I had belonged to another fraternity across campus, which was not too successful because they were kind of brutal, and had an opportunity to come in and reorganize Pi Alpha Pi, and I thought, that's for me. And lo and behold.
I'll go back to what I said originally. The reason the fraternity Phi Epsilon's here today is because of politics. And because that was Claude Lee. And it was the university saying, Pi Alpha Pi's gone under. Would you like to take over that and use it as a base for your political party? And Claude said, hell yes. You know? And that got us started. And we were so close to it, I mean, we were only like 4 doors down or something like that. A bunch of us living over there, a bunch of us. And it just blended.
I think that I probably I had lots of friends that went to other universities, and everybody was in fraternities, and they were all local down here, and I didn't seem to fit in too well. I don't know, they were dealing, and we just had a mutual bond between the bunch of us that did the political parties. We just kind of got together and thought that was a good idea.
Working with people. if you're going into any kind of business or any kind of environment, any kind of activity to make your living in, you gotta be it.
And had the sense of belonging and brotherhood.
And that was a plus to it. We had we had meetings that went for hours, following the procedures, and it was just a wonderful learning experience. I highly recommend it to anybody coming to college.
Got several: Henry Hall, Claude Lee.
Yep.
Those are two goodies.
Yeah, Ron Eels. Remember Ron Eels?
Yeah.
Who?
Ron
Ron
Eels.
Eels,
He
yeah.
was from Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One here.
Yeah. I forgot
We sort of
about
lost him, but he was an influence.
that. He was a runner.
Yes, he was.
Came down here to run track.
Yeah. And he was involved in the student government. I think he was president one time. I can't remember.
Could have been. I can remember Ron coming out in the backyard of the old Pile House and just elated one night. He says, "Look at the northern lights." And they were showing up a little bit. He said, "It's just like home."
Homecoming.
Hippodrome.
Hippodrome. I remember homecoming, we spent the night working on the display. That was for the old house. And we just worked diligently all night long, not a bit of rest. That was fun. I remember that mostly. And then Hippodrome with Ralph Spurrier sitting on my knee as we sang. What did we sing? Friendship?
Was that
That's
Don Rude's.
Yes, we had some brilliant mind in Don Rude. He almost by himself put together our skits, developed them, and directed them, and he unbelievably talented guy.
Yeah, I think that was the spring you guys are talking about. I spent a summer in Europe riding on a motor scooter around there, and I brought the scooter back with me, and we had that in Hippodrome. I remember riding down the aisle in Hippodrome, across the ramp, up onto the stage with it.
And you remember the night shirt parades around the track over there at the football. You remember football field?
Football field. Another favorite memory of mine. Maybe you have a question. One of the things we dearly loved to do was go and serenade the sororities.
Oh yes.
We had an unbelievably talented musical bunch. And those of us that couldn't sing, they would just say,
mouth to words.
They were kind to some of us that weren't quite that good. But we were a hit with the sororities. We really were.
Yeah, you're talking about homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
I think that may have been the year you're talking about. I remember being up 42 hours straight working on that homecoming, and we had it's when Sputnik was running, and we had a Sputnik running around the top of the tower. That did work. But we had a Wushak out there that was going to kick the football up to him, and we never got it quite working. But Sputnik kept going.
Dear old fraternity, all my life through, I'll love and cherish the memory of you.
And the Sweetheart Song.
Sweetheart Song, and then
Drink beer. Did I say that out loud?
Yep.
And at that time, I was not drinking beer because I didn't like it.
Oh, but it was fun to do.
Many years ago, more recently, I did a wedding, performed a wedding, and went over to it was in a small town, and I went over to the school, which was the community center, parched because it was Saturday. I was so thirsty, and all they had was beer. I thought, oh my Lord, beer, but it was wet, and I drank it, and I liked it.
And still do to this
And
day.
still do to this day.
and I think that's about that spring. Went the last year I was here. Then they had the Greek sing. Did we start that?
Yeah.
And I can remember still standing up there singing, "Black, black, black is my true love's hair.
The color of my true
The
love.
color of my true love's hair." Yeah, I remember once The green sleeves, isn't that what it's from?
Yeah, I think it is.
And do you remember after fraternity meetings, we used to go to that restaurant on Central? We had our own was it Phi Alpha or cigarette?
It was
Rude.
Pi Alpha Pi.
And Don Rude would take a pitcher of beer.
The wishbone.
Yes, yes, and he would just open his throat and he'd pour that thing right down. I mean, he didn't swallow, he just poured it down. I was, what? I think of that often when I think of Don Rude.
Rude, yeah.
Yeah,
Talented man.
he was. You're talking about the heart now, the tug of the heart. It sort of fills a void in your heart, if that can be done. That's what I do.
It just, you can depend on each other and in doing things. And it's just a feeling of fellowship together.
Camaraderie.
Yeah.
I'd do anything for these guys, and I know they'd do anything for me.
And you know, Carl and I were SIGEPs for 1 month before we graduated. We had a lot of history with Pi Alpha Pi, but to this day we still keep coming back to SIGEP stuff because we have that connection with all of our brothers. It doesn't make any difference whether they're number 1, which by the way you are, and 1140, which my grandson is. We're all brothers.
That's right.
The big one or the little one?
It was about as big as this room.
A mite larger.
Maybe.
Well, when we
This came out of there. Yeah.
when we joined the old in the old house, originally there was just that one central room. And that was the one that was built in '49. And then they added the chapter room and then the kitchen. So those were the things that were there when we first joined. We had lots of good times in that fraternity house.
Yeah, I can remember spending a lot of time over there. There was the brother called Niall Kunkel. I don't know whatever happened to Niall, but he had an in with some people that had jukeboxes, and he built an entire sound system for that chapter room out of parts out of old Wurlitzer jukeboxes.
There's a whole
And it covered the whole end, and it really looked nice. He put all the cabinets together and everything.
We've got that addition completed. We started a program serving lunch, and our cook was a lady named O.J. Whitmore. Is that right?
Except that the first one was Pat. You remember Pat?
I don't remember Pat.
Okay, Pat is the one who wore dangly earrings, and she was not too gentle a person, but she was a good cook. And thereafter, anytime my wife wanted to get some dangly earrings, I said, no, Pat wore dangly earrings. And you're not like Pat at all. And I'm not sure why she went, but I think OJ or whatever her name is.
And I don't know how we got O.J., but what a blessing that woman was. She was soul-ridden, you know. She was down home preaching to us all the time. And she served us great food, and she was the sweetest woman. I believe that was when I was president of the house when I met her. And she was just a godsend for us.
Who did they say last night hired her and then had to fire her sometime later? Remember that?
Yeah, I remember. And you got me on camera, and I can't think.
But we really cherished those meals.
Oh, we did.
They were good. In fact, I'd like to see them come back to the fraternity house. They're special.
I hear an underwriter.
I hear an underwriter.
In your dreams. That cost money. And I had no money.
It was now that my memories come back. Ralph Spurrier was talking about
Okay, okay.
And Ralph said he was comptroller here when they hired her, and he said that was a cash cow with those lunches. He said, you can't believe how much money we made on those.
Something to put in your thinking hat, right?
Well, there are three words that we use. I can't remember all of them. It's diligence, brotherhood, and
Virtue.
virtue. And those are certainly evident in this house. From the founding of Pi Alpha Pi through Sig Ep Colony, through Sig Ep, those three words are still valuable and worthy of emulating and acquiring.
You sound like a minister.
Brother, let me tell you.
No, I think that's great. I don't know I can remember any one particular time other than, like I said, I remember the times we worked on things like you guys were talking about the homecoming, and the Greek sing, and just the camaraderie, everybody getting together, doing things and doing them well. I think the fraternity always did things
We
well.
did well.
It was the most wonderful experience to prepare you for the real world. All the conflicts you meet, or many of the conflicts you meet after you get out of college, you faced them in the fraternity. The arguments, trying to solve the arguments, trying to balance the people's feelings on each side and to get things done. It was just a fantastic experience for me going into business. I hate to tell the people from Wichita State, but I got my best education here at this fraternity. For doing what I did after I got out of school, fraternity taught me more than I ever got out of my classroom. It's a great experience. Great experience.
I have to tell of an experience that I had. Anytime I think of the fraternity, I think of this experience. And that was, we were just barely into Sig Ep. I was involved in drama or some activity. And so I came late to meeting. And by that time, we had our secret knock. And when I came into the old fraternity house, the door was shut, and so I knocked. Who is it? Ed Thompson. Can't come in unless you have the password. I went through every possible word that I could possibly think of. And secret knocks. And they were all just laughing in the other room. I was too. They finally, out of mercy, let me in. Otherwise, to this day, I would still be out there knocking. I just remember that experience.
You never forgot the knock, did you?
No, well, yes, I did, because I don't remember now, because I didn't know it that long. But anyway, it was fun.
Great time in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Growing up and learning how to live with everyone else.
And it's that sense of brotherhood that I just think is so important, so valuable. A sense of belonging.
I think you're probably going to hear this played over and over again.
It's all right.
Lynn Harrington, I went to Conway Springs and I attended Wichita State from the fall of '57 till January of '62. I was a music major, one of those infamous music majors.
I'm Alan Johnson. I'm a graduate of East High School in Wichita, and I came to the University of Wichita in 1956, graduated in 1961, being a 4.5-year student. My majors were both political science and history. And I left Wichita State and went to graduate school at Georgia Tech.
I'm Bob Martin. I went to Wichita East, as did Alan. I graduated in 57 and came to the university in 57 through 61. Graduated in 61. Majored in mathematics here. And then upon leaving here, I went to optometry school.
I wanted to find people besides music majors to hang out with, and when I came in, it was all music majors, so what can you say?
Not all.
Not all, there were a couple exceptions right here.
I joined the fraternity because I was asked to. Pi Alpha Pi was then in existence as a local fraternity, and I think the decision had been made to take the fraternities that were local to national status, or to join national fraternities. And so a group of us on campus were invited to participate. And I welcomed the chance because I too was looking for friendship and common interest with other folks on campus. And it proved to be a great experience, and I'm particularly thrilled to be involved in a group with a mission of taking the local fraternity to national status.
When I came to Wichita State as a freshman, I wanted to be involved, and I joined the ISA, Independent Student Association. So freshman year, I was in ISA and enjoyed the intramural sports and the interaction with people. And then I was largely influenced to join Sig Help by way of John Songer. And John, I understand, recruited about 3 or 4 of us that came in that semester. And, you know, he had been in 1 semester ahead of me, and talked about the, you know, the benefits of it. And I felt that was that I needed to join an organization to kind of develop myself socially, and that was pretty much how I came to join.
I would say that, you know, that's one thing that SIGEP really did for me. As a Kansas farm boy, I would never have been ready to have faced all the circumstances that I did in the subsequent years, because as a teacher, I would be put in positions where I was a band director and I would have to be able to relate to just about anybody. If I had any doubts, social lacking as far as my confidence, I could have been in real trouble, because I taught in Shawnee Mission, which was a pretty snooty part of town. And there's not a problem. It really wasn't. I was always comfortable. I give the polish I got at SIGEP for what I did.
Well, it was a great value to me because I think it was a learning experience of understanding that you really can do so much more through a group effort. And in the various activities we had here, whether it was taking the fraternity national, or it was competing in Hippodrome, or even challenges of academic performance, the fraternity was a great support to me personally. And I was involved in campus activities and campus politics, as it were, through Student Government Association offices. And the fraternity was a great training ground and a supportive institution for me in running for office and working on campus activities.
I felt that I did gain through just such things as our Monday night meals, learned a few things of etiquette, and then
how to eat chicken with a fork and knife.
Yeah. And the mixer dances. I was not much of a dancer, and that kind of provided a chance to learn a bit about that. And I enjoyed the intramural activities, and particularly the Greek sing sort of activities, and the Hippodrome skits. All of that was enjoyable.
Tom Snyder, I think he probably distinguished himself as much as anybody that we've ever had here. As far as, I had him as a roommate when I lived with he and Bruce, and Tom was an aeronautical engineering major, and he absolutely studied half the night to all night some nights. We actually we lived in a little old place over in Chautauqua. We took one bedroom and put all 3 single beds in it, so that the other bedroom could be made into Tom's engineering room, because he had this big drafting table and everything, and literally the light was on in there most of the time. But Tom went on to Palo Alto and became head of manned space. And I think it's quite an accomplishment for a Belle Plaine, Kansas farm boy. So, I always thought a lot of Tom, still do. Plus his wife was my accompanist.
I certainly agree with that assessment, but the one I select is Bob Kressler. Bob Kressler was initiate #1 of Sigma Phi Epsilon Kansas Zeta. And Bob is one that embodied the balanced man concept to me. He's tremendously social skills in bringing people together and always having a concern about people beyond himself, and being concerned about trying to get all people involved and having a camaraderie in the activities of the fraternity. And I think he still plays that role here today.
Absolutely.
I'm going to call it a tie, but my first thought before Lynn had said anything, it would be Tom Snyder. Tom was, all of the things that Lynn mentioned, personally, he helped me a great deal. He was ahead of me in mathematics, and so he was really helpful in kind of tutoring me in advanced algebra type courses, and you know, plus all in integrity and attributes that he had. And I said at the time, I'm going to say Lynn Harrington. It may embarrass him, but you know, he's been a role model for me. He was our president of our pledge class, and pretty much my best friend in the fraternity.
And you know, the interesting thing is, after 52 years, Bob and I have always stayed in touch, and three of the others. And life goes on and you take different avenues. There's just certain people that you're hooked to, and Bob's one of those people. And I'm still a little pissed at him because he didn't call us to stay at our house this trip. But oh well, we'll get over it. All of them. I remember Greek sing. I remember our dances. I remember intramural basketball, going to Emporia to play a tournament, riding in Bob's car. Something went south as we were just up beyond Peabody, and the car was at the side of the road with steam rolling, and we were out hitchhiking carrying our gym bags. And we got there right as they were tipping off the ball, if I remember right. It was pretty tight.
You know, the thing about that experience, you know, you and I were talking about it, and Jim Tracy, I asked him about it. I thought he was one of the players, and he said, no, he didn't play, but he went along on that. He said he went along on that disaster. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we got slaughtered.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't remember it that way. I thought we won.
No, the big one I remember as far as social activities, we had an invitational basketball tournament here, and we ended up down at the Pink Poodle on 2nd, or 1st, one of those two one-way streets. And somebody, some drunken cig-up from someplace else, hit the thermostat and broke it on the wall. And I remember the biggest trauma out of the whole year was the chapter figuring out we were going to have to pay for that thermostat, which I think was $50 or something like that. But it was a major deal. I mean, we were liable because we brought these people in.
Well, for me, there were just so many wonderful memories of activities on campus. Certainly the Hippodrome activities were paramount to me. Don Rood, who can't be here today, authored 2 or 3 years of the Kansas Zeta SIGEP entry in Hippodrome, and we won each year, as I recall.
We did.
And Don was so creative in his writing ability and bringing campus activities to the fore as we poked fun at other fraternities and other sororities, or complimented other sororities, I guess, or sororities. And so those were great memories. The activities in which I was involved, such as the political, the Student Government Association activities, were also fond memories, because some of the fraternity brothers were certainly supportive of what I remember as BPOC, Better Politics on Campus.
I remember the campaigns.
And our ability to win those elections and then accuse the Beta Theta Pi of stuffing the ballot can.
Well, I can still sing the first part of that song that we did. I'm called Madam Butterfly, and I'm King Harry's spy. All of your secrets I tell. I don't think it's funny. I do it for money. There isn't a thing I won't sell. Only Room could do that. And Just Fugate. Dean Fugate was in the audience when we did that, and we thought, you know, they're probably going to pull our plug, turn on the lights, but we won. It was, and there was the one about Tea House of the August Goon. You remember that?
Right. And then
There's one about Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Robin Hood was the one I was in. I remember something about it.
Well, the one I loved was Don Root writing that, "Won't you watch that beta man trying to stuff the ballot?"
We were merciless. And I remember we did a takeoff on the student union because the food was so bad. And we did the one Tea House of the August Goon. I was a great white hunter, and the first line that went on is, we brought some guy out and dumped him as a body on the stage, just whoomp. And what happened? He died. He ate at the, what do we call it, the campus something or other, and he died. That's how we started this game. All of them. We always sang grace at the meals. That was kind of neat. I always sang the Sweetheart song. I Want to Be a College Man, and a little bit more. Just always sung it every hour dance.
Right.
What else do you remember?
I mean, those are the primary ones that I recall.
I recall somebody singing a drinking song.
Something called Drink
Well,
Beer.
that was a favorite. That's the one we memorized. We don't need to see the...
You know, and talking about activities, I mean, I know this is a dry house, and I'm proud of it for it. We never consumed in the house that I ever knew about.
No, I don't think so.
But we always went to the Cedars after a chapter meeting on Monday night. And when we got to Cedars, we would solve all the world's problems. You know, anything that had been discussed at the chapter meeting that didn't quite get resolved, we would take care of there. And if that didn't work, and Tom and Bruce and I would go back to the house, and we would set up till midnight, hashing over what needed to have been done.
Before Tom starts studying.
Yeah, exactly. And then Tom would start studying after that. Tom a lot of times would bow out on going to the Cedar because, in fact, he had something he had to do. But I, as a music major, of course, could put it off till tomorrow. It was all right. And I don't know how Bruce ever got through in accounting because of our business, because I don't remember him ever studying. I really don't. You can quote me on that.
Won't have to.
Well, I remember staying at the Drake Hotel, which was a big deal because that was the premier hotel. And I remember Dave Holmes was our accompanist and had done all the rehearsals with us and was a piano major as well as flute and was really a good player. And we got to RCA to make the record, and they wouldn't allow him to play because it had to be a union musician. And so we brought this guy in, and he played fine, but he didn't play nearly as well as Dave because Dave knew it inside out, that wasn't allowed. I always thought it was a raw deal. But anyway, we had 2 recording sessions. We recorded it in the afternoon after we flew in that morning, and then we slept overnight, and we recorded again the next morning. And it got down to the 11th hour, and there was this one song. I can't remember which one it was, but we did retake after retake. I think we recorded it 10 times. And in those days, you know, that was done on tape, but they didn't expect you to have to splice, so it had to be right. Anyway, we finally got through. I know the flight up there, we went over, we were flying on, I think it was Braniff. That may not be right, it wasn't TWA anyway, but we were flying on Electra prop jet. We flew out of Wichita. And as we went over the Flint Hills, they were having a thunderstorm, and this thing was going like this. And Rusty Crawford was riding with me on the seat, and he was really worried about me because he thought I'd be really scared. And I said, it's no different than riding across a plowed field on a John Deere tractor. It's just bounce, bounce, bounce. We got there. But I don't remember the airport. I know we went into Midway. I don't think a hair had been built yet. Don't know too much about all that. But then I went back the next year for the conclave in '61. And I remember it distinctly. It was a very good experience.
How were we selected to sing Sigap Sings?
By audition. And literally, I don't know how many of the various chapters around the country put them in, but I'm sure there were 8 or 10. But it was by competition. And there was a committee from National that made the decision as to who would be chosen. And I know we were good. And the other thing I don't think most people acknowledge, but we ran in at least 4, if not 6 ringers, because we didn't have enough tenors. The balance wasn't good. And so Chuck Lindsay was our director, was a really good musician. In fact, ended up being a college choral director. and Chuck knew who to recruit. So Don Juneau, I know, was one of the people that sang on the record. He sang a solo on one of the songs, and we didn't have anybody could sing that well, but it sounds really good. But now we had Howard Solomon was in the chapter, and Howard was an engineering major, but he had the lead in every opera they did on the campus because he had a fabulous voice. So he sang the pipe song, "I'll Take My Pipe Before the Fire." That's Howard singing that. So we weren't totally without talent. They had people like me that were instrumental majors, and then, you know, we sang anyway with instrumental directors' voices.
I heard two of the wives last night, mine for one, and someone else I was talking about how good that sounded last night.
It was amazing. I think it was the acoustics in the lower level. A lot of resonance doesn't hurt.
She wrote an email this morning to her, one of her daughters, and in that email she said something about they sang and really sounded good for elder guys.
Elder guys, that's right. Yeah, I talked to my daughter today who went through Wichita State. In fact, married a SIG-Up from the chapter here. I don't know whether anybody would be the right vintage, but Scott Showalter was here. I think he was up SIG-Up 86 through 88. He was in and then out because he didn't have the money. And, well,
I remember the name. That was like, what, 20 years ago?
a little more than that, 25. Hate to admit it. Yeah, Elise Harrington was my daughter, and Scott and Elise met at the, what was it, Sam, the Cowboy Festival thing they had in the fall? What do they call that?
Cowboy's Revenge.
Something like that. The drunken brawl in the parking lot they had. Anyway, that was their first date. He's a physical therapist, graduated here at Wichita State. They live in northern Kentucky.
There's not much to say.
Oh, less said better.
It was very small.
The old part didn't leak, the new part did. We had buckets everywhere in the chapter house, chapter room. The kitchen was an add-on behind that, and behind that was a ritual closet. We took as much room as we could out of that kitchen. There wasn't much. We had a food program that was started. In fact, I was kitchen chairman for a semester anyway. We hired O.G. Whitmore. It was this black lady from Dodge City. I think probably the Llewellyn twins knew of her, is how we came up with her. And she was a good cook, but her sanitary standards were poor. Ralph Spurrier was the comptroller, and he fired her, which has the distinction of being the first SIG-Up to fire an employee. But I remember taking O.G. to buy the pots and pans because we weren't set up yet to have bulk meals. We went down on North Main in my trusty 50 Chevy, and I was, I'd never seen a black person until I got to Wichita State. I mean, I was raised in a Jim Crow town. Conway Springs, you couldn't be there after dark, so nobody came during the day either. And we don't talk about that nowadays, but that's the way it was. And so I was driving OG down to go shopping, and I was very conscious that I was odd man out because I was a white man driving a black woman in a car. I mean, believe it or not, that's how conscious we were then. But we went to a second-hand place on North Main, and we bought all kinds of pots for $10 and came back and set up a food program. She was quite a gal. And the funniest thing is she said on that drive, I still remember, she was talking, her husband was deceased. And she was talking about, he was really black. And that was a standard of excellence. The blacker the man, the less there'd been inbreeding with Jim. And therefore it was something to be valued. And I was just, never thought about that. It was very educational. But she was fun to work with. And she would not wash a pot. I mean, she would not. She would cook them, but you cleaned up. And so after every Monday night meal, and then we started having lunch, dinner at the house.
Yeah.
And we did that for a couple of years, then played hearts afterwards until you had to go back to class.
Well, the house was adequate for its purpose.
Yeah.
But there was no residence, and I think that perhaps the music was the thing that tied the group together more than anything, because there wasn't the residential living quarter at that time.
Of course, there was the annex over on Fairmount.
Right.
And we all ended up living in the annex, or a lot of us at one time or the other. I know I was halfway through my last semester of my senior year, and had a really cool apartment on the top floor of 1725 Fairmount, which is the Mahan house. Charlie and Amy Mahan had been original professors at Wichita State in the early 1900s. Both were very educated people, and they'd raised 4 sons. I think it was 4 boys, all of whom became doctors or lawyers. I mean, very successful. But I was living in their select top floor apartment, which had a great view of the refinery, looking off to the west. At night, the lights were great. But I had to break my contract because they needed 2 more people in the annex. So I moved in midway through the semester. And they had a kid who had not made his grades that semester the next year, Steve McKee, who I've never seen or heard of since. But I know we got his grades up. He was a pretty good roommate. But anyway, moved in and lived there, had the experience. So. And after I graduated, January '62, right away is when they built the living quarters in the so-called new house.
Well, gentlemen, our time.
Can I ask one more thing? You said that the ritual closet was back in the kitchen area. When I was in the house, the ritual closet was in the main area. There's a furnace in the corner. Was that a bathroom? Because we went through there and I saw water hookups in there.
Yeah, that was the bathroom. That was the only bathroom we had.
Okay.
Because before the other addition was built, that was the bathroom. And of course, Pledges got to scrub the floor with a toothbrush and all those terrible things we don't do anymore, which thank God we don't. You don't remember any of that, do you?
No, I don't.
No, of course. But I can tell wild stories if you want stories. You're out of time. We better save some time.
Well, so then the ritual closet was that in the kitchen in the southeast corner?
Far southeast corner. Northeast corner.
Northeast corner. That was the ritual closet.
As far back as you could get it.
Okay.
That's where it was.
Because there were always there was 2 rooms there.
Yeah, that's why.
And so one of them
One's
was
a
that.
mechanical closet,
Yeah.
the other's been the pantry.
Yeah, but it was back of the pantry is where it
Okay.
was. Yeah, I think probably the wildest thing that ever happened, we were having help week, and I was supposed to be in charge of the cooking, which was dangerous because I didn't cook, but I could make macaroni and cheese, so I was on the tap. But the Pledges thought, if we kidnap everybody that's supposed to be running help week and take them out of town, we won't have help week. So I was living in this top floor apartment we're talking about, and I'd been taking finals, of course cramming and not sleeping at night, and I finally was done, and it was a beautiful January afternoon, and I was on my bunk and I was snoring, and all of a sudden, there's a half dozen guys, grabbed me out of this thing, wrapped me in a blanket, carried me down these steps, they're outside steps, easily could have been killed, threw me in the back of a car on the floorboard, hauled I and another guy out south of Derby to a farmhouse, locked us in a closet with some cans of beans and sleeping bags. Thank God it was a warm day. And went back to get more people. And we're going, what are we doing here? We managed to get loose. We were tied loosely because they expected us to survive. Got out of the closet and looked across the wheat field, and there was 3 houses along the highway. We were back in a field quite a ways. We had no clothes. They'd taken our clothes. We wrapped up in the sleeping bags, walked across the wheat, got to the house, knocked on the first door. I don't know whether there's anybody home, but they weren't dumb enough to come to the door. Went to the second house, nobody came. Third house, this lady with 2 little kids at home came to the door. She said, "Could we use your telephone?" And we called one of the other guys, I can't remember who it was, Mom, and said, "Could you come get us?" She did. So before they got back, she was there. And they came rolling in with another carload. And we were already gone. They knew it was up, so they just turned around and took it back. It was original. I mean, you got to give them credit. Okay.
That story should be included.
Okay, it's a well.
My name is Bruce Walton. I attended Belflane High School, graduated in 1955, worked 2.5 years as a sheet metal mechanic for Boeing, Wichita, and Seattle, and came to WSU January 1958, moved into the annex on South Vassar, or south of Fraternity House. And I'm finally graduated in 1964. I paid my own way through school, so I worked and dropped out 1 year, got married, And that's my history.
Well, I came here from Michigan originally, and it was kind of a shock to come here to the plains of Kansas.
And who are you?
Michigan had lots of trees, and my name is Jim Tracy.
I remember.
I'm from the class of '62, and I went to 3 different high schools. That's why I went there. To mention, first was in Livonia, Michigan. Then I came here, went to East High School, and then went to the first year, Wichita High School Southeast. So we were the first graduating class there. I didn't do much in the way of extracurricular activities, except I was always a musician, so we had musical events going on. Then I put myself through school too, and worked at the Spanish department because I was a Spanish major. And that was a nice way to work and be a student at the same time. So that's the nutshell information so far.
I would have liked to have known that because I was struggling with Spanish and I didn't know you were that good at it.
Oh.
It's my turn, thank you.
Yes.
Henry Hall, and excuse me, I just had a pizza. Arkansas City High School, Ark City, and don't you dare call us Arkansas because we really get upset. The Bulldogs will eat you alive. Graduated in '56 and came to Wichita, University of Wichita at that time. Didn't know anybody because I'd done all my high schooling down there except brother Ralph Spurrier and his wife that I used to date in high school. That's a lot of my history, but we'll save that till later. Graduating took me 5 years to get through because I worked also. Was fortunate enough to do some work at KMUW, WCR, Twin Voice at the University of Wichita in Wichita, Kansas. That's what we used to build up. And that led to KARD TV, and I was able to work the kids shows and that kind of stuff, particularly for summer vacation or summer relief for the union men. And they made union wage, well, we got to make half of the union wage, which was good for a college student. Graduated in 1961.
I joined the fraternity because my good high school friend Tom Snyder and I were planning on attending WSU, WU at the same time. He was 1 year behind me at Belle Plaine and he graduated. His mother had cancer and passed away, so he went to work at Beach. And then I went to Seattle and he stayed here and kept telling me I should get back going to school. In Seattle, I was working second shift, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Except weekends, that was 8 hours. And I finally decided to leave and come back and start school and went through fraternity rush, went to all the houses, and of course I joined the Phi Alpha Pi house, which is what Tom had joined, and that was the last year for Phi Alpha Pi, 1958. We become fall, we become Sig Ep colony, and we went through the colony stage till April 30th when we were initiated in and joined the National Fraternity.
Now I forgot what the question was.
Why did you join the fraternity?
Okay, John Songer is the one I have to blame for that. And he is deceased now, and I don't know if it was in high school or college, he slammed me up against the lockers in the hallway and said, "You are coming to the Rush Week," or whatever the new thing was called. And I took that as a compliment that he wanted me so bad to do that. I was looking forward to the fraternity because it had a reputation for having all the nerds. These were the ones that were the philosophers and the musicians. All the rest of the jocks and athletes were next door. So I leaned toward that direction. And sure enough, I was a liberal arts major and enjoyed philosophy and enjoyed music. So that's why I joined and had a great time.
I didn't get slammed against the locker, but I was invited by Claude Lee. And Claude reminded me very much of my brother, stature, etc. And he was one of the key reorganizers of Pi Alpha Pi, called in by, I thought it was the dean, but I think he said the other evening it was Corbin, the president. I think that's right. Anyway, to reorganize Pi Alpha Pi because they've really slipped and we're not doing anything in Rush. So the dean had called some leaders from campus, the male leaders, in and said they wanted to give what we'd call now a boot to Pi Alpha Pi. And it was almost as if it was the beginning of the balanced man is now known, because we were accepting brothers. Well, it was still a pledge. I felt like I was right. You know, one of the brothers I just met over here for a while and wasn't in the regular meetings, which is now vastly changed for the better. And I was fortunate enough that when we changed for Pi Alpha Pi, and it was either the Dairy Queen because of the shape of the building, or
yes.
One time the men of Webster put gasoline pumps out front. There was some kind of a station here in town that that represented. And as I understood, one of the brothers came by early in the morning, and the men of Webster's pledges were just finishing up, and they put all the gravel down and put these old-looking pumps up, and even hung a couple of flags, you know, like they'd have, and they were just getting ready to leave. The brother called the local security, and so by the time the classes began, that was all taken away, and nobody got to see it except a few of the policemen that came by. So we didn't open as a filling station either. Turned out to be a pretty good brotherhood.
Well, can I interrupt? I just got to respond to that because we all were called the Dairy Queen or the ice cream store, and all the guys next door had the big house, and they were the athletes, and they always made fun of us because we just had this little place. Well, now we can have the last laugh.
Well, they did have a second story, and they can look down on us, right?
Right.
We were a very diversified fraternity from all of Kansas. I was from Belle Plaine, Henry from Arc City, Dr. Llewellyn's from Dodge City, Les Withrow from Scott City. We had all over, and all of us had been to small high schools. We participated in the bands, the glee clubs, the singing, school plays, football. So a whole bunch of people here, not super jocks, but we enjoyed playing basketball, and we enjoyed flag football. We weren't supposed to tackle each other.
It was easy.
We had a lot of activities, and singing was always a strong part when I was in the fraternity. The national record was cut. I missed that year because that's the year I dropped out and got married. But that was a part of our history.
Yeah, I think that's a remarkable part, looking at the trophies there, Bruce, upstairs. And I see all these trophies for many years in a row of winning these musical events. So I think that's something for a fraternity to do that.
Because I have not been ever mixed in with a group of independent thinkers, everybody a little different ideas. We had some really great discussions, a little heated sometimes, but most of the time great discussions on which way we should do something. because we, and I just had not been exposed, you know, grew up with my parents and my small town, and all of a sudden here with everybody with all these ideas. But the biggest part was, like Henry spoke of a moment ago, people in here would help you. I was not a strong English major. In fact, when I took my entrance exam, they told me I would not pass English. And because I had not had good training in grade school or high school. So as I come in, I had brothers sit down and help me, work with term papers, work with everything. It made a huge difference for my C average, but it really added to my experience, and in business world afterwards, the experience of getting up and talking in front of people, getting up and taking charge of something and getting it done made all the difference in the world because of the fraternity. I still say it's my best course.
Yeah, it helped me learn where the forks are supposed to go when I'm having dinner. And what to do with 3 forks on the left side. That was the house mother, Price, who was there.
Ruth Price.
Ruth Price helped us learn that, as did the brothers. So maybe I learned some social graces there. I was kind of a recluse, as I still am. And so it forced me to do some social things that I didn't want to do and would not have done except that they were organized and I participated in them.
And I think when we think of those types of things, we were a local fraternity at that time. We were still in the reorganization. And in the colony, all of a sudden the national fraternity had all these programs that you just kind of plug into. And when you were talking about which fork, it came to my mind that there's this little rhyme that when I dip my soup, you're either going to dip it thitherwardly, and not too many guys could say that, so they would say, I dip my soup away from me.
That's right.
Oh, that's how, pretty simple. Now, that's not from the national. We did that locally. But you think of the balanced band, which is very popular in Sigma Phi Epsilon now, and indeed, I think throughout the whole fraternity's Greek system, because the brothers are brothers and maybe called new members, but they have the same vote as the brothers who've been there for a while and been fully initiated. The major changes that have happened within Sigma Phi Epsilon have set pace for the other fraternities who are still trying to play catch up because, oh, you got to go in and scrub the toilet with a toothbrush, that's very important to learn. No, I think it's better to learn which fork to use to put in your mouth, not a toothbrush that came from someplace you don't want.
I learned when you sit down, you hold your fingers up like this, and this means your bread plate, and this is your drink. So that glass of water is the water, and this is your bread plate over here.
Well, I just learned that. It's taken 55 years.
You had kind of a short memory.
I'm going to stick around with you. Yeah, short memory.
Which one was which now?
What? Bread.
Okay, bread.
That's a B.
B. Okay.
Oh.
B. Drink plate.
Oh, gosh.
Drink.
Now, you didn't even see that, did you?
No, I
that's what I
remember
thought.
that.
Okay.
Sitting with.
Oh, shucks.
And Tom Snyder, who has always remained my best friend, but I really, there's so many people that had different influences. It may have been one of those English courses, may have been my journalism courses, it may have been, I had a lot of help, and I respect all of the members of the fraternity. We had an excellent group, except for Jim.
Yeah, I think of a string of them that were early on that I would think I was closest to. It's just a matter of timing. And that would be Alan Johnston, Bob Kressler, John Songer, Randy Duvall, and Henry Hall. But Randy Duvall, at that time we were calling them Pledge Brothers. Later they called them Fathers. I kind of leaned toward the brother concept, but I just liked it better. But I saw Randy last night and he even gave me a hug. I have not been in touch with anybody in 50 years, or maybe it's 40 because we might have done some Christmas cards. But those are the ones. Alan Johnston might have been the biggest influence, just intellectually. He's the one I looked up to as a much more mature individual and a literary person that guided me along my studies. And he doesn't know that.
You ought to tell him.
Yeah, maybe I will.
I think you should, right. I can't pick one,
Yes.
but I can pick one for different things. I'd pick Don Root if I wanted somebody to write me a great satirical script that you'd have to, you know, take a double think, wait a minute, does it mean this or does it mean that? Because Don was a master of that. So if it came to Hippodrome, that was Don's project, you know. As long as it was acceptable type of language, because he'd get carried away a little bit. Have one of the engineers put in a whole new stereo system at the end of the dining room, you know. Who was that?
Remember that? No,
Yeah,
who was
okay.
that? Who did that?
What's his name?
Well,
Who put that
and
in?
that's why I'm trying to think of the tall fella. He was he was a Pi Alpha.
Yeah.
And it just bum, 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 and he did it, you know. Homecoming, there was always somebody else that was very good at that.
For these younger guys listening, stereo is what we call what you call iPod now.
You know, that big thing with a hole in the middle, they probably use as a planter now to drain the water.
Good point, good point.
With speakers about 3 foot wide and 6 foot tall. And
lots of bass. Boom,
lots of
boom,
bass.
boom, boom. And the sorority girls loved it. Really a great place to dance with. I guess in general, excuse me for interrupting again, the men that touched me the most was the whole heart itself. The initiation of Sigma Phi, or going into Sigma Phi Epsilon, was one of the most dramatic things that I'd ever experienced. And thankfully, I think, we still use Clair de Lune because it's such a classical piece and you don't hear it every day, but you'll hear it often enough that when my brain hears that, boom, I'm right back in that, that setting, which is like a breath of fresh air, you know. All the brothers were there, hot and sweaty sometimes, but that's all right.
Well, what I remember is we used to use lighter fluid in the ritual, and you could smell the hair burning.
Yeah, those images stuck.
I think they call those the good old days.
Oh, the good old days.
I think there's a magic marker that's used now, you know.
They're fragrant, aren't they?
Right.
Yes, I brought one with me. It's out of the annual. This is nightshirt parade, and all of the pledges, first football game at halftime.
First one of the year.
First one of the year, first home game of the year, we had a parade. And the year I was a pledge, we won first place because we had a Falcon shrinker. And the Falcons were North Texas State, I think. And so I went down and took a bunch of guys. We went down to my parents', close to my parents, and there's an old barn. And at 10 o'clock at night, we're hanging in the rafters of this barn catching pigeons. And we got a bushel basket, it used to have a lid on it, and we would put these pigeons in the bushel basket, and we built a square box, no floor in it, you just walked along. Well, it was being pulled by this car, and of course, the minute it started, we paraded around the track, the guys all had big Falcon uniforms. We hustled them inside the box, and we opened the basket, and the pigeons come out and done a nice circle in the lights and took off. And then the car started up, and everybody standing in there. Here come the two before against their back ankles, lucky we didn't kill somebody. But that was one of our major events that is no longer held because no football.
Right, no football team.
Well, I suppose I have to mention an event that's popping in now because Henry's here. But I was always trying to start a band. Where I was trying to start a band. Lynn Harrington helped me a lot in that band because he was in it playing clarinet.
What kind of a band would that be?
Well, it was a Dixieland and a dance band and sort of a polka band too sometimes. And Lynn Harrington and Lee Spann, the two of them would both play two clarinets, and they tuned them about a half a step apart just to get a laugh when we played the polka music. But one event is the airport event, and we call it the tarmac, when Henry Hall is coming back from a fundraising, well, whatever publishing tour you were doing.
I'll pick up on that.
Yes, well, you can add that. He comes off the plane, so I had to organize that event with the airport manager, who was very kind to me and very hospitable. He let me go out there with his car, and we toured the thing, and he said, okay, you have permission to do this, and I brought the band out.
This part of the story.
And we have all these funny looking uniforms on, and I'm a banjo player, and Roger Doyle was playing the tuba. And so anyway, Henry Hall is being greeted at this time, and he doesn't know anything about it, and the stewardess holds him up on the plane till everybody gets off. They just have to go down the stairs. It's not the long entrance anymore.
Stairs off the plane?
Stairs off the plane, just like the president does.
And the car drove out onto the tarmac right up to the plane.
It did, yes.
It's a small Plymouth.
Just so we know.
Room. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So we're playing along, and here's John Ritchie with his coat, a fur coat, raccoon coat with a fuzz coming off, and he's got a thing on his head, and he's throwing rose petals and whatever else, and here comes Henry down the stairs to gawk at all this fol-de-rah and the band playing, and John Ritchie runs up to him. John Ritchie is 6'7", so dwarfs everybody, and gives him a big kiss on the cheek. That was Henry's greeting with this wonderful band that we played.
Actually, I was a traveling representative for Sigma Phi Epsilon when I graduated. I was fortunate enough to be selected, and the rule was you could go home first year. You go home, make sure you're there for homecoming. Well, I traveled the Midwest, but I did not. You couldn't use your own chapter. You couldn't call upon that. So I'm coming home for homecoming. That's what I was doing.
Okay.
You
had told me.
And fundraising, all that was a lot later. Anyway, I always thought, well, if I can turn around and go back up into the plane, I'll try.
You couldn't hide.
Because when you see John Ritchie with that mannequin wig that kind of stuck out like this, and he's so tall in the air anyway, and here he came with these big, shiny, well, they were hedge balls covered with foil. And that was a lei that he put on me, and I thought he was going to hit me with them, you know. So I'm trying to be polite and be tousled around at the same time. What I remember most is that the ROTC guy, they're members of the fraternity, they were ROTC. It must have been a Thursday because they were in uniform, and they had trumpets and all the brass stuff. And once we got in this little convertible and we're riding off the tarmac from the Wichita Airport on the west side, all the way through Kellogg. At that time, Kellogg was not a full-lane zoom, expressway. You had stoplights all the way through. Well, there were 2 cars, so the guys in the uniforms would go ahead of us like they were the police, and they'd pull up and stop the traffic, and we'd go right through it. And I, kind of sunk down thinking, oh boy, I could see the headlines, staff representative, arrested for and I don't know.
I didn't organize that part.
Well, I don't think anybody did. It just happened, And we got all the way to the university. No police cars stopped us. Nobody questioned anything because these guys, commanded the attention that they thought they should have, and it worked. But it was the closest I ever came to feeling like, well, if somebody would shoot me, I'd probably be better off, like a presidential kind of a campaign. That was going to be one of my good stories. I had no idea that you organized.
What can I say?
I think differently about you right now. You are really...
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's good to know that. Good to know that.
Tell us about the fraternity house at 1740 North Vassar.
The fraternity house was 2 rooms and a kitchen.
Oh, there's a bathroom.
Yes, there was a bathroom.
I used to clean that a lot.
Yeah, we cleaned that a lot.
And the original leaked. I mean, every time it rained, we'd take all the little pans or whatever we had from the kitchen and you'd spot them, because it was going to leak. And it was not a fun time. In fact, there was a pledge sneak once when it was raining, and somebody had the forethought of bringing flour and throwing it around. So it was like a paste all over the floor because it was raining. I don't know how long it took the pledge class to clean that. They made it, so they had to clean it up.
I don't know how I got involved as being house manager, but I had to clean that
Everybody
up for
had
a
to
year.
be out of the house manager for a while.
Was that why?
That's why.
That was a lot of fun.
At that time, we had a food program every lunch. We had a cook, O.G. Whitmore, and she cooked lunch for us, each lunch. And then Monday night, we had a formal meal where Mrs. Price came, Mother Price came, and this is where we learned our manners and how to talk to girls and kind of
politely.
And each year we had a pancake feed, and O.G. Whitmore was a black lady, very large in size, and we had to wear a Aunt Jemima turban and dress, and we entertained the sorority girls at a breakfast on Saturday morning. And there is some pictures of that around that event. So it's, again, a different world.
But that was the first hired person we had working for us. And she was also the first one fired because of cross-contamination of different things in the kitchen. And Ralph Spurrier had the designation.
Ralph was a clean freak.
Yeah, okay.
What's wrong with picking food off the floor and putting it back on the
we do it at home all the time.
Anyway, I wasn't going to bring that part of it up. Anyway, she was fired, and Ralph probably was the most despised person for the next day or a week or two, really.
He was because he was comptroller. Why we despised him? He had to pay bills.
He was the first paid comptroller.
Yes, we paid him.
That's right, and that's how he was able to stay in the fraternity because
he really got tough.
Buried. Yeah.
Well, I found a screw in the soup once, so came off the spatula. But the good side was
you didn't have to pay any more for that meal than you did the rest of them.
It was good
she
soup,
fixed great meals, though. That was a wonderful lunch. Nice hot meal every noon.
I think it was 50 cents for lunch.
Something like that.
And $1.
And it still made money enough to buy,
wow.
well, these plates and cups right there. Not too many of them left right now. Right?
Right.
Just seems what you got.
Okay.
My advice would be to volunteer for any job in the house because each one of them is a learning experience. most of the time you're learning that there's a leader and no followers behind you. But it's an opportunity as you go into the business world. Everything you do in a fraternity will happen to you at some time in your business life. Whether it's public speaking, getting a banquet together, entertaining, this type of thing. There's so much thought process has to go in, and you learn so much from the different experiences that you had when you're in the house. And when you get married, you'll know how to clean the house, how to vacuum, how to sweep.
If we haven't learned it at home.
Yeah, if you haven't already learned it.
Which a lot didn't.
I was well trained when I got married.
Well, I had a good time upstairs with the graduates today. There were 4 graduates, undergraduates that
In this
live
house?
here. Yes.
Yeah.
And they were most gracious and polite, and I appreciated their hospitality that they came up and made me feel welcome. And so we spent about 15 minutes upstairs where the balcony is, and just had a good time. I just wanted to mention that appreciation is something that's good training for them, perhaps. Maybe it wasn't a natural offer for them to do that, but they did very well.
The heart of SPE has always rung in my spirit, and the heart itself in our badge and how much we use that became very real for me when I had my heart transplant, 2002, and there's a lot of twos in there. I was the 222nd one that was done at St. Luke's Hospital in Milwaukee. It was the second time that I'd been on the list because I was on the list at the University of Wichita, Wisconsin in Madison. And they said my cognitive skills were going down so fast I wouldn't be able to care for myself, which was true. I just wasn't getting enough oxygen for my own heart. So they sent me to a second doctor, and he sent me to St. Luke's. My point being, there was always another chance, it seemed like. And I'm 9 years out now from the original transplant, doing well. Not to say that there aren't ups and downs, but it was the heart that held us, I think, together. The heart that's on the fireplace downstairs in this new chapter house was originally built by, don't tell me, Alan Shore, Mother Shore. And it's been revised, brought up to date a little bit, but I remember when they hung that the first time on the old fireplace in the lodge, and that it was a very meaningful ceremony. Our ritual uses the heart quite a bit. So when I think of Sigma Phi Epsilon, the heart is the symbol of the power that keeps us going, pumps the energy into the brotherhood. And as each of you have said, that there's special brothers that are important to you, that there's special events, it all comes down to the brotherhood. And without that positive interaction, and negative to some degree, because we have to be able to learn to get along with everybody, it was a very condensed life experience in 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. Maybe some guys were only here for 2 and transferred to another college, but they still come back here. They could have gone to other chapters, but there's something about our chapter, our brotherhood, that was more important to them to be here for reunions and so forth versus another chapter in the state or another state. So there's something about the originality of a Pi Alpha and a reorganization of a Pi Alpha, and then joining a national fraternity, and thank God we chose the right one, which is now the leader in the Greek system, and I anticipate it's going to continue that. It's done well by us, and I think we've done very well for them.
Well, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for brotherhood.
That was my
Amen.
exact
That's right.
thought.
That's right.
And the fact that we're here at all, and the emotional feeling I can get from everybody. I thought everyone would be a stranger, and I was going to be polite and not recognize anybody. Well, the twinkle comes through right away. Nobody's changed.
Same old Henry is wearing a different suit.
Yeah.
And hair.
Yeah, I never had all this stuff, you know.
That's right.
50 years ago, and nobody knew who I was either. But we all get along, and suddenly the memory is right there.
Yeah.
Nobody's changed.
Well, there's something about the memory, though. You have certain memories that I don't have. But you said I was there and I was doing that. And, okay, I'll believe you. And vice versa. You know, don't you remember the time we went? No, I don't remember that. Oh, yeah, and you did something. No, I don't remember. Well, let's change the subject and talk about something else.
They all pop up when you start talking about them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Brotherhood.
And we thank you for these brothers that have videotaped and saved this forever.
And the hours you're putting into this is,
So for
I admire your stamina.
200 years from now, they can look back.
Yeah.
When you all are sitting in these chairs. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and doing this.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, my name is Ralph Spurrier. I graduated from Arkansas City, better known as Ark City now. And I was a student here for 5 years, 3 years of which I was single and 2 years as a married student through 56 through 61. Graduated out of the music school and taught music for 17 years. Went into business, then went back into school administration. Retired in 2000 and loved it.
Yeah. Les Withrow. I came here from Scott City, Kansas. The school there is Scott Community High School. Graduated there in '58. So I came here the fall of '58 to start Wichita State. My studies involved the music program because my dream was to be a musician of some sort. So this was a school to go to for the music background. And I was here till '64 when I graduated then. I got married during the college years and had to work, so I extended my time in school for that reason.
My name is Donald Rabendike. I came to WSU, it's actually WU then, graduated from WSU. I came from Southeast High School, started out here in '62, finished up in '67, fall of '67. And I was in the school of business and stayed in business, and a month ago I quit business. I'm now completely retired. I'm a lot younger than these guys here. These are the old guys.
Yeah. Why did you come to Wichita to go to college?
Came to Wichita because of the fine music program in School of Fine Arts. Like Les, this was the place to either here or KU, and I chose Wichita. Came up and I lived with Henry Hall and his folks the first semester that I was up here. Went to JUCO one semester at our Ark City JUCO. Found out real quick I was not going to get a music education there. I came up to Wichita.
I went to a music camp in Gunnison, Colorado. I think it was probably the year of '57, maybe, or '58. And I met Dr. David Foltz. He was the head of the choral department here at Wichita State. So he asked where I was going to go to college, and I didn't know at that point. And he talked me into coming here. So here in '58.
Well, I came to WSU, or WU, because it was the cheapest place to go. I lived here in Wichita, and I could take classes at night, and I took most of my classes at night and worked during the day.
I don't know who the initial contact was. Henry and I pledged at the same time. And I think not Tom Jacals, but Potts, what was his first name? John Potts was probably the emphasis and the focal point of me joining the SIGEPS. Well, it was Phi Alpha Phi, of course, at that time.
My contact was a number of we music majors were in the choral group at Wichita State and the madrigal group, and the fraternity was about to embark on the challenge of winning the contract to do the record for the fraternity. So they got a bunch of us in that were music majors, and that's how I came in.
Well, I've always wondered why we had so many music makers.
That's it.
That was it.
Uh-huh.
A little bit of corruption.
We had already inherited several of us before the big push for the record.
Yeah, the record brought in a lot of recruits.
Yeah, I was just looking at the banner down in the basement, and most, 2/3 of those guys were still here in the house when I joined up. I joined the fraternity because my father told me I was going to join a fraternity. He said that will be a good part of your education. He said you'll learn a lot of things that you won't learn in school. And I did. I met a lot of nice guys, and we did a lot of good things. Had some good times, and you learn table manners and all those important things that you just don't learn unless you belong to a fraternity. So I've always been a believer. It was a really good experience.
Was your father in a fraternity?
He was in a fraternity at the KU, Sigma Nu. But that was a long time ago. I think, of course, that might have been the reason why he didn't finish college, because he partied too much. and he probably would have been the first to admit it.
The freshman year, I was not involved. The sophomore really got involved. I think the second semester of my freshman year. But then I was married and dropped out of the house, and during that time is when they went national. And they came and beat on. We had a trailer over here on Fairmont in behind the old restaurant that used to be there. They came one Sunday and beat on my door and said, "We'd like to have you be the comptroller and come back in the house." And I said, well, they said, well, how long would it take to work? And he said, well, it'd be a Saturday job. And I said, if you'll pay me what my Saturday job pays me, I'll be your comptroller. And so Ann and I became active once again. And I think we had an old 99 key adding machine. And I think that the introduction to finances was easy for me. And why that would happen to a music major, I don't know. But it opened up a whole new field to me, which I later, as superintendent of schools, took tremendous advantage of. But it ended up being part of my livelihood, is that being introduced and working as a comptroller.
Well, as I remember, the friendships that have developed through the time in the fraternity, which in my case wasn't all that long, but I still met some fellows that were just super and still good friends today. And beyond that, the event of going to Chicago and make that recording, that's probably the highlight of all of my fraternity time. Because that was for a kid coming from western Kansas with big dreams of being a musician, vocal music of some sort, getting to go to RCA and record that music. Boy, that was really top drawer. So that's one of the better memories.
Well, I think, as I said before, you learned a lot of things on how to be a gentleman. And I always thought we used to have the dances, the hour dances. And that kind of got you used to talking to girls. which was not all that bad of a thing. I never did have much trouble talking to them, but some of the guys did. And so I thought that was really probably a good thing. And then just the friendship, when you had a problem with a class, there's always somebody that knew something about it. Sometimes they couldn't explain it well enough for me, but there's always somebody, I think. But in that, it was a great experience. It was just rounded me out. I just made me comfortable in life.
Probably John Potts. And John was a SIG-Up before he came here as a Pi Alpha Pi. He was already a SIG-Up, as I believe. I think John, and influence in the music department as well as fraternal living, was probably one of the most influential fellows for me.
I'd say Bruce Walton. He's the one that I made some reference to there just a moment ago of long-time friendships. He's been very close, and in fact he got me active again because I had dropped out back in the early 60s. So he got me reinstated and back in, so I'd say Bruce Walton.
That is a tough question. You know, there was a lot of guys I really liked a lot, and a lot of guys that, you know, respected, but I think Vander Heiden was my pledge chairman, and he cracked the whip over us, and I think that's probably the guy. Now I've lost contact with him. I have no idea where he is, but that would probably be my choice, I think.
I remember as a comptroller, I was invited to go to KU and audit their books once, and discovered that their 5 executive officers were living off of the fruits of the rest of the house. They were had a free ride.
That was the SIG-Up house?
That was the SIG-Up house. And I think lots of houses have had either a comptroller or a president that had a reduced house bill, but the entire executive committee had taken advantage of that program up there, and it put the alumni chapter was having real problems making ends meet up there, and during the audit it became obvious that they were living off their brothers. And the alumni, when I made my report, told them that you guys need to pay up or we're going to push all your clothes and everything from your room out on the lawn. And didn't make me a very popular person. But,
well, who you were talking to.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were lots of guys who thought you were pretty good.
And the experience of going to Chicago was significant. And I can remember we were invited to Jackie Wood. There was a meeting, a Halloween party was real big then. And we were invited out to Jackie Woodin's place to a barn party. And she got the ponies out. And in the dark, we decided it would be fun to ride bareback on those ponies. And I had never ridden on a polo pony. And I did not ride very long. But that was a real experience.
Best that I can remember, having not been in the fraternity all that long, and since I was recruited because of the music background, the best that I recall, it was the challenge of hopefully winning that opportunity to make that recording. So we had a lot of hours of practice. Chuck Lindsay, if I remember, was our choral director, and he worked us over thoroughly to try to get us up to a level that we could win that, and did. So that has to rank up there for me as one of the neatest events that we had, taking on a big challenge and winning it.
Well, some of the best memories were working on homecoming displays and Hippodrome. Those were always exciting events. It was big build-up and then it's all over with. But that and just lunches here at the house, because we always had a hot lunch every day at the house, and that was always a great time to meet everybody and how'd your day go, and just then head off to work. And probably one of the one year I lived in a house, and part of my reduced for my bill was if I would be an assistant cook. So I signed up for the job of being an assistant cook to save $10 a month on the housing bill. Turned out the assistant cook was really the dishwasher. So I think...
Who was the cook?
Frank Bopat was the cook. And Frank was the cook, and I was his assistant, and we just fixed breakfast. That's all we did. We were in charge of breakfast, and I would help with breakfast once in a while, but most of the time I washed the dishes. And Frank and I got well acquainted that year, and then that summer, Frank didn't go back home. Normally he went home for the summer, but that summer he stayed in Wichita rather than go back to Wilson. And he got, with a little bit of my help, got the brilliant idea that we needed to make a batch of cherry wine. And so we didn't think anything of it, and we just went out, picked a bunch of cherries, and popped them in a couple crocks down in one of the wardrobes down in the basement, and set about to making cherry wine. And Gary Baxter, I believe, he was our house manager. He kept coming in, either him or Eversole kept saying, "What's the smell? Bopat, you need to change your socks." And Frank would say, "Well, yeah, I'll take care of that." And so it only went on for about 3 weeks. And so we had a fairly good batch of wine, but it was fun of trying to make it. And of course, if we'd got caught, we probably would have been thrown out of the fraternity and all that good stuff. That's part of the fun of being a college student. You got to break a few rules.
Was that in the dorm area?
That was in the dorm area of the house prior to this house, in between the Phi Out house where they added on to it. That was at the lower level.
Did they build that while you were in college?
Yeah, they started that. Well, when I pledged, they had a picture of what it would be. That they were having a hard time getting pledges because everybody else had a house, and all Sig Epps had was just a little square building. I think we called it the Dairy Queen. But it was tough to get pledges, and so they had this picture to show that we're going to build this house. Well, a year later, they still hadn't built it. And then in 60, I think it started in 63, finished in 64. And when they finished, they had it just about done. And in the fall semester, the housing board said that you're going to have to fill that dorm up or you're not going to be able to afford to pay for that house. And so they hired Pat Murphy to go out all over Kansas and recruit pledges. And so on pledge introduction night in the fall, the Betas paraded their 10 new pledges, and the DUs had their 8 new pledges. Fidels had, I think they had like 8 or 9 new pledges. And this is my second year on campus, third year. And Pat parades out because he was the head recruiter, so we let him parade him out. And he paraded out a line of 40 new pledges and filled the house. So we didn't have to, we had every bed was filled. And so that was a thing. And it, of course, unbelievable number of pledges, and that got the house financially sound. So that's that story. Tried to get Pat to come here, but he was going to be in Chicago with his son, so we could meet.
It always had a problem of some kind. I can remember when we started the lunch program, we didn't have much of a way of refrigeration, and a grocery store down on 13th, I believe, closed down, and a bunch of the engineering students went in and tore out the refrigeration and made a refrigerator out of the old pantry. And it worked. And then we bought a commercial type stove for the house at that time. And once again, the victim of necessity forces you to sometimes be extremely successful. And our lunch program was extremely successful and very profitable. And the dishes over here are as a result of that lunch program. But I forget what your original question was now.
Just tell us about the house.
Oh, and during that time we had a fraternity brother during the summer came in and took a number of items that he was going to use to furnish his girlfriend's apartment. And he made the mistake, and his name will remain anonymous, made the mistake of leaving a bag that he had bagged up part of the things that he was going to take for her place, and his mother's charge card was in it. And of course the police had been called, and they found this address and telephone number of the thief. And so Don Crowell and I met with him down at the police station, and we were trying to determine whether we were going to press charges, because he had been a pledge, but I don't think he ever went active. And we were trying to figure out what to do, and finally the boy's father showed up. And we were in bad need of a new roof at that time. And the father decided that it would be most appropriate for him to make a substantial donation that would take care of a new roof. So sure enough, we got a new roof out of that, and no charges were preferred.
I can't follow Ralph. He's got too good of stories. I don't remember a whole lot about the house. I didn't live in it, and I wasn't in the fraternity all that long, so all I can remember about it was the initiation that we went through, and that seemed kind of a scary event. But I don't remember much about the physical aspects of the place at all, other than it just didn't seem like it was up to standard. So that's about all I can recall.
But had a good roof.
Yeah, had a good roof. Yep.
Well, I can remember the house very well, but I can also remember the annex that they had down the street over on Fairmount Street. It was a long building. It had, I think, 4 rooms on each floor, 4 or 6 rooms on each floor. Each guy got to decorate the room the way he wanted to, and of course, as a pledge, that was really cool. And so all these older guys had these fancy rooms, you know, they fixed it all up in there. And I often look back and said, no wonder the place didn't burn down, kill them all. But it was totally off limits from off the campus, and there were no rules. It was private property, and so anything went, and they had some pretty good times over there. And of course, we had all of our pledge week duties most of them were done over there. So we had to clean the place up for the actives and those things, important things. I can remember probably my junior year, one of the alums, and it'll probably come to me here in a little bit, repainted the trim on what we call the new house, and so he wanted actives to help him, and so I learned how to use a paintbrush, and I've always remembered that. It was got a pretty good education on how to cut in a window sash and how to paint a window sash without getting paint all over the glass. So that was one of the memories I had. It was actually a good educational experience, because I can do it yet today.
I think the philosophy that the house had at that time, that the Sig Eps did not have Hell Week. When it was Phi Epsilon, when I was pledged, and my pledge class was in charge of cleaning all the gum and everything off the seats in the basketball stadium at that time. And then anytime that there was snow, we would go to the, I think it was called the School of Logopedics up on 21st Street. If there was snow, we had to be there before daybreak to clean all those walks. And so instead of Hell Week, we had Help Week. And the following year, the pledge initiation planted trees for 2 or 3 days, many of which are still, especially then at Jardine Hall and on north of there. They planted thousands of trees. And I was somehow associated with the pledge class, and I ended up making the pledge sneak trip to, I believe it was OU. My wife was most pleased to have me gone, and it was a capture type of thing and take an active with you down there. But that was a real experience. But I think that the development of the camaraderie, it taught boys how to become men.
Yeah, I feel the same way. When I first came in, I don't remember the ceremony of getting the pin that we all have, but I used that to get engaged to my wife, and I'm very proud of that. That's about the only symbol that I really have of the fraternity, because I didn't keep a lot of the things that went with it. But those things that I have kept all these years is that brotherhood feeling and fellowship and all of that. That's uppermost in my mind. And I just feel like it's a place to be if you want to have a brother that's not really your blood brother. In fact, I think of the guys in this fraternity more as brothers than my own. So it's pretty special.
I believe that if I was to tell a young man why he should join a fraternity, I would say you select a fraternity that you would be proud of when you're an old geezer. And no one told me that, but fortunately I was able to do that, and I selected a group that were kind of like me. Nice guys and having a good time, but also wanting to get an education. And that went hand in hand, having a good time and getting an education. If you don't have a little bit of a good time, you've missed part of the experience of being in college. So I would say, you know, as long as the brothers have, you know, a good, positive outlook towards life and some character, then it's a grand experience. And I really enjoyed it. Don't regret 1 minute the time I spent out here. When they built the second edition, or the new house, whatever you want to call it, back in '63, then I actually built that door. And then, you know, I watched it over the years, and it stayed up there up until the last 2 years, I think. Then they probably wore it out. And when I heard word that they were going to build a new house, I contacted, I don't know who I talked to, somebody. I said that I'd be glad to make a new door for the house. I've got something special in mind. And so I sent them a sketch, and I guess they liked it because I built the door. And I want something to be, you know, very unique, and it'll be the only one like it in the world, because I don't own the door company anymore. And they weren't interested, the people that bought it weren't interested in making any more doors for Sigma Phi Epsilon. I told them, I said, you know, you could probably sell them all over the country over the years, but they weren't that much interested in it. So In fact, when I was negotiating to sell the business, I was in the process of building the door. I showed him the carving before I actually put it in the door. So, but it's the front door is the most important part of a building. That's your window. You're welcoming to your building. So I thought, the house ought to have a nice door.
Well, I guess it's ingrained in you. If you can't say something good about somebody or bad about somebody, don't say anything at all. I think I'll remain silent there.
I second that motion. I don't have anything that I could contribute like that. It's all been good.
I was just kidding about the dirt. Just anything you'd like to say. That's
yeah, I understood, but no, it's been a great situation.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and because of this meeting today, I got reacquainted with some old brothers, and the ones that live here in Wichita, the ones I've talked to, we're going to get together again in the not too distant future and catch up on old times.
Something that has become important. Most of us lost contact with the house during our especially early working years. And I don't know that there's a cure for that because we're all busy having families and raising children and establishing our career. But as we look toward retirement, we've become a little more nostalgic and we have the wherewithal to take a few days off to meet his brothers once again. And I think all of us have memories about trying to remember what happened to brother such and so. And the effort of the fraternity house, especially when we started having the 50th anniversary, bringing that information together. And of course this effort here will add to that program. I think the first 20 years out of school, it would be extremely hard to have a successful program like that. But when we start reaching 40 years out of college, our needs are better met, and the opportunities to meet once again as a brotherhood becomes more possible and even more desirable. And I urge the houses in the future to take that window of 4 or 5 or maybe even 7 or 8 years, and for the next generation coming on, they need to do the same thing.
Well said.
Yeah, because we tend to, after 20 years, you really get separated. In 30 years, it's almost impossible to catch up. And if we would probably do that a little quicker, but it takes.
I think the house always made an effort to pretty well keep track of everybody. Right. But my best man was Joe Francis. We don't have any idea where Joe is. We've never been able to track him down. But the house, making that effort, that camaraderie, that brotherhood, is deeply ingrained, and it comes to the surface as we age or mature. We don't get over
right. That's true.
Well, we learned a lot from each other.
Yes,
we really did. You learned.
That's true.
Pat Murphy was a salesman, deluxe, and he got all those pledges. But he was also a great carpenter, and I learned a few carpentry tricks from him, and I learned some math from Pat, and I learned just a lot of different things from different guys that as I went through. But most of all, we had a good friendship and a lot of fun together. It made it easier to go to class on Monday when you had a fun weekend.
It's Alan Shore.
And this is your lovely wife?
This is my wife, Gay Shore.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in Oxford, Kansas. Oxford High School.
And when did you attend college?
Started in 1955. Graduated in 59 with a bachelor's degree. Came back and graduated in 62 with a master's degree in electrical engineering. Actually taught part-time in the engineering school when I had a teaching assistantship for a period of time while I was doing my graduate work. You know, we were solicited, and I don't even remember who contacted me as far as originally. And I have a feeling I wasn't a big man on campus, for sure. I was in engineering, and I think probably the reason I got recruited is I had a reasonable grade point average. That would be my best guess at that particular point. Well, it couldn't have been only a short time after initiation. And I don't even know whether, you know, we were all new, trying to get everything put together, trying to get fitted into national and all that. And somehow it came up that, hey, we need an emblem for the chapter room. And I said, you know, I'll just take one of the pins. And I said, I can make something that looks like the pin. And I was living down at my dad's down at Oxford, and we had a little small workshop out there, and I went out, and I think it took us a weekend to put it together, made it, put the lights in it, and got a piece of the leather for the center, got that all put together, and I think after that first, you know, it was like several weeks in, but wasn't too long after we were initiated, we had the plug-in lighted sign, and it's been there for 50 some odd years, whatever. So it stayed around longer than I thought it would, for darn sure. You know, it was just one of those things that, and I don't even remember thinking about how much it was cost, because it was really virtually nothing at that point, what it took to put it together, just buying some light bulbs and some sockets and putting in a little labor to do it. So
you were actually living with Tom Snyder and Bruce Walton, and you went down for the weekend.
Went down for the weekend at the farm, yeah. So, but that's, you know, that's been a number of years ago. It's kind of interesting because almost all the pictures you see of the chapter, somewhere in there is that. And I guess I was kind of surprised that in the process of over the years, that I'm sure they make one similar to that, or you can buy one probably from one of the you know, the pin making companies or something. I always thought they'd probably just buy one of these days and replace it. You know,
I'll bet it's one of a kind.
It may very well be. So,
it's irreplaceable.
Yes.
Yes. So.
Someone fixed it up just a little bit when I was in the house. That was
well, I think they've had to put some new sockets in it, I'm sure, because
they did that.
I soldered it all together, and somebody asked me, did that meet code? And I'm going, met mine. I'm sure it didn't meet any others, but it met my code at the time.
You said if they ever get rid of it, you wanted it
yeah,
back.
I would love to have it back if any time they ever decide to get rid of it. And I'm still in existence. I would love to put it up out in my workshop or someplace just to say, hey, there's something I did, you know, type thing.
When they did rework on that, it seems like I remember somebody finding a piece of paper in there that said something. Did you slip something in there?
I had no idea. I don't remember doing that. No, when we were at the 50th, I finally decided I should put my name on it. So when they had it down out at the get-together, I actually put made by or designed and built by my name on it, just so I had a record on it. But before that, it never had anything on it, as far as I know. It might have been, you know, I could have thought about maybe putting it in, but I don't remember doing it. I really didn't have a lot of social contact here on campus. I mean, my brother and I were both going to school at the same time. He was a couple years ahead of me. But it was pretty much go to school, study, and go home, or vice versa. And so it gave me a social outlet. And at the same time, we had
we had some really good times. Lived at the annex for, what, a year? Yeah, lived at the annex for a year, and that's probably one of the craziest experiences as far as living at a college campus situation that you'll ever run into.
We have heard there are certain rituals that you went through going at the annex. You'd come to meeting and go to the Cedars and then stay up late until Tom had to study. Is that right?
we had it fixed up pretty well. We had bunk beds in the upstairs, and we had a study room downstairs with desks in it. And we had a kind of a get-together room, and there was always something going on. Mostly poker game, chess matches, anything that happened to be popular at the time.
Shaving cream fight.
Somebody in the house was doing it. And that was one of the most memorable one was one of the guys, we had a bathroom that had a tub and a shower in it. And we had limited facilities as far as tubs and showers. There was a tub upstairs. And one of the, I don't even remember who it was that got it started, but one of the guys was showering. The other guy was in the bathroom shaving at the same time. The guy got out of the shower, and the guy that was shaving decided to be and he took his shaving cream and proceeded to paint the front of the guy with his shaving cream. And there wasn't too much said at the time, wasn't a real battle at the time, but somehow everybody decided that one of these days we were going to have a major shaving cream fight. And the only kind of shaving cream that would shoot more than 2 or 3 inches was Burma Shave. Burma Shave, you could stand here and plaster that wall with Burma Shave. It's basically if you shook it up a little. And it went for, I don't know, several weeks, and it was a nice day like this. The culprit was out playing catch in the park, which was next to the annex over there. And the other gentleman had his can of Burma Shave, went out, guy's catching the catch, he tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned around, he just went all the way down. And that preceded the major fight. I mean, everybody that had a can in the house got into it. There was no sides. It was just everybody was participating. And when we got through, there was shaving cream all over the walls. And we're going, how in the world are we going to clean this stuff up? And it turns out if you let shaving cream dry, it just brushes right off the wall. And you know, they never, everybody had a spare can, but we never had another major fight with the shaving cream. I don't know why. It was funny. We had, I cooked over there. I was the cook for the house. And I didn't, the only rules were the cook always ate first, and the cook never cleaned up. And the other rule was at 7:01, or just after 7 o'clock in the morning, if you weren't down from to eat breakfast, anybody else that was there could eat your breakfast. So it was like, you could really tell when it was like 6:59. Because every alarm in the rooms would go off, and here would come this herd of gentlemen down the stairs to eat breakfast. And it was really a challenge because we'd have a big, like if we were fixing spaghetti or a goulash or something like that, you have this big skillet, and you have to figure out how much 1/8 of it was. So if you were the first one to take out, you couldn't take out more than your share. So you had to decide whether you wanted to be first and make pretty sure that you got your share, or be last and maybe there'd be some extra left over. You know, so it was always a challenge. We had a good time, and we ate for Monday through Thursday, 2 meals a day, breakfast and a supper, and Friday morning. And then you were on your own for Saturday, or Friday night, Saturday and Sunday. You could do whatever you wanted to. And we kept stuff in the refrigerator for those days too, but it was $3 a week. That's what it cost you for those meals. I brought up stuff from my dad's farm, eggs and stuff like that, but we basically ate. And then we had a full set of dishes that we got for, I think I was asking Gabe, I believe it was from Safeway. It was the old brown pottery that they gave you. You could get mugs and cups and plates if you bought groceries. And we accumulated a full set of dishes over a period of the year that we were in there. So a lot of fun things happened at the annex. It was condemned several times by the fire department because Carl Friedell's mother owned the house, and she was a pack rat type person. She had newspapers and sacks and stuff out in one of the rooms, and it really was a fire hazard. And every time they'd come in, they were threatening to close the house, and they never did. I don't know how we got by with it, but it was fun though. We had a lot of good camaraderie from I think there was about, I'm trying to remember last night exactly who all was there, but I think there was about 8 of us that lived down there for at least a year that I was in there. So it was down on, somebody said it was Fairmount, but...
no, it was Vassar. 16 something. North Vassar.
It's where they,
right across from the park.
It's right across from the park, and it's where they blocked off, later they blocked off that street.
16.
How many houses from the end was it?
Oh, I don't remember. It seemed like it was kind of in the center of the block, but...
yeah, sort of.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's still there or not. But it was different, and we were trying to put together something, because there was no facility at the original house to where you could stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say the Friedells owned it?
Yeah, Carl Friedell, his mother owned it at that time. And Carl was there, and Dick Masters, and myself, and Ralph Spurrier. Chavalis was there, John Potts.
Carl Friedell's grandson is an undergraduate here.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Colleen was my roommate one summer.
I laughed because I don't suppose Ralph would remember it, but Ralph and I were in 2 bunk beds in a little small room. He slept on the upper bunk, and I slept on the lower bunk. And Ralph loved to have the window open at night. And I can remember one winter, that winter, I woke up one morning and I had snow all over my pillow, my head, and everything, because Ralph had opened the window, and it had snowed, and he was up high enough it didn't really get down. It settled down on the lower bunk, and I had all that snow in there. So we had I participated here. I wouldn't say that I was a singer. I can carry a reasonable tune, but we did the regular chapter songs, but that was.
You did a quartet with somebody.
Yeah, I don't remember that,
Remember
but
who it was.
That was prior to them doing the recording. I didn't get involved in the.
But you won Hippodrome your senior year.
Yeah. See, I don't remember that. We had a good time though, putting stuff together,
and I was mad because the Tridelts won instead of the Alpha Phis.
You're an Alpha Phi.
But we had in the chapter. I can remember when we had the old kitchen, which was a disaster in the old house, pretty muchly, and we had who was it that was next door? The DUs or
Webster's in those days.
Anyway,
Fidelts, Phi Sigs.
It was the house that was just south of the old fraternity house, and we pretty much were convinced that they were stealing some of our firewood. And I can remember us plotting, which we never did, but I thought they were going to do it. We were going to take one of the logs and hollow it out, put a little black powder in it, and let them steal it. And we got thinking, well, that might not be too safe to do. So, but you have all those, because we caught them one time, I think, and they actually caught one of the guys that was in there and had him pinned down. I don't think they actually physically harmed him at all, but there was always to-be wife at that point. Decided that she and one of her other friends,
Carl Friedell's fiance
at the time, were going to do a surprise birthday party for myself and Carl. And this is while we were living at the annex. And so I think you even had it at our house. Yeah.
Yeah, we had it.
Wasn't registered, I'm sure.
Forgot to register it.
Forgot to register it, but it was at the fraternity house.
And I bribed one of the pledges to kidnap, because you'd always brag they wouldn't bother you because you were the cook.
I had always told them you don't touch the cook, and that was at the time when there were a few of the actives who were showing up kidnapped downtown in front of the theater.
The old Miller Theater.
In their underwear. Right when the movie was being let out. And I don't know how often that happened, but it happened enough that it was in the back of most of the actors' minds that it could happen. And,
it happened to Dick Masters.
Yeah. And she had bribed my pledge son to kidnap me. And they were going to kidnap Carl too and bring us over to the surprise birthday party. Well, I was studying, which I did more than most of the rest of them, and all of a sudden this cloud sets over you with 2 or 3 of the guys that were going to grab me and haul me off. And I could see myself in my shorts downtown at the theater, because this is evening time, and so I persisted and put up a fight. In fact, I bloodied one kid's nose.
Broke a chair.
Broke a chair in the and they finally just, to avoid any other disasters, told me, "Hey, we're kidnapping you to take you to the birthday party."
Next line.
So I had my pajama shorts on. So I said, "Surprise, surprise! I'll just go like I am." So
that was unusual in those days.
Yeah. I said, "You're going to kidnap me? Okay." And then when they went to kidnap Carl, they decided, because I'd been so resistive, that they took a big blanket, and they just, 3 of them took the blanket, threw it over Carl, and wrapped him so he couldn't resist. So they literally did kidnap him, but I went voluntarily. And sort of. But
surprise me, I'll surprise her.
Yeah, it was a surprise birthday party, that's for sure. And I can remember that. I really did. I had visions of ending up downtown in my shorts, and they wouldn't provide any way to get you home. You had to figure out some way to get back to the fraternity house. So I was being combative, let's say it that way. But that was, one of those experiences that you don't forget. The exchange between the fraternities, it was ongoing all the time. So, it's nice to see the house get completed and have a place that everybody keeps working at it, going to be here forever.
Forever's a long time.
Well, but pretty muchly forever, because you look at the condition the house was when we took it over, and it was still...
It never got any better.
Still never got any better for 50 years, but it was still, it was still functional. And so it's just, it's really rewarding to see something happen that is this nice. I mean, it really is.
It really is.
Can be a really good thing to do. So.
It's solid. The tables, the rafters.
Yeah.
Really?
That was the rafters in the rally room.
I'm Don Llewellyn. I graduated from Dodge City High School in 1956. Attended junior college for 2 years, and then came to Wichita State University. Actually, I came to Wichita University. I was the last graduate of the municipal university. One thing I remember is going up on the bus to Topeka, bringing the legislators back, twisting their arm to make us a state university, because Wichita was having trouble keeping quality instructors and everything. So, but I loved it. Worked my ass off the whole time I was here. I was one of those unfortunate people that never smart enough to get a scholarship, but hard enough to get a good job. Worked hard enough to get a good job. Well, because I could get a good job. I worked for Pepsi-Cola in Dodge City, and then came here and worked for Pepsi-Cola. My first inclination of how many crooks there are in business, because the people that work for Pepsi-Cola here in Wichita stole it blind, you know, and that was my first frustration of business, because I could just see that they just ripped the company off. But I had enough freedom. I'd come up the house in the afternoon in my Pepsi truck, and because there's nothing to do, and the boss told me, just go find yourself somewhere to get lost, and they really only needed me on Thursdays and Fridays, and so, that's one of the reasons I came to Wichita, was to get a good job. But I joined the fraternity right off the bat. Bob Kressler got us, and best thing I ever did, absolutely. Well, I wanted to belong to something. I think it's critical in anybody going to college. You got to have a place to belong to. I had a twin brother. We both joined, and just had more fun than I can ever tell you. And yet we just met some of the world's best people. So it was a great time. We were also here during the time when our chapter won Greek Sing. All of us could sing. And we won Greek Sing every year. So the National Fraternity asked us to fly to Chicago and cut a record. That was a thrill. 40 SIG-EPs, getting an airplane, staying at the Drake Hotel, recording at the RCA recording studios. I got a story to tell you. Want me to tell you a story?
Absolutely.
We were at the RCA recording studios, and we all wanted to go. Shelley Berman was playing, and I believe it's called the Horn or something. It's not there anymore. It was the nightclub. It was an honest-to-God nightclub. So I get on the phone, and the guy said, hey, we've been down and we can't get in. There's a line 22 miles long. So I picked up the phone and said, this is Don Llewellyn. We're at the RCA recording studios, and we've got 6 of us would like to come hear Shelley Berman. So just, Mr. Llewellyn, we'll get you right in. So we get there. It wasn't very far, because we were in the recording studios there downtown. We went around the big line, got in, and were ushered right to a great seat. It was a packed house. You couldn't even get another person in there. Big, big place. So about 10 minutes later, here's a guy coming along carrying a phone with a cord, because they didn't have cordless phones then. And he said, Mr. Llewellyn, you have someone must talk to you. And I thought, how do you remember who I was? But they said, Don Llewellyn, RCA Recording Studios. Well, because that at that point in time was big then. So I get a call from, I believe it was Von Sink at the time, and he said, Don, where are you? They say you're there in there. We've been outside trying to get in. And I said, just a minute. So I motioned the guy, and I said, I have some friends who would like to get in. They're also been recording all day, and they're tired. They want to get in. Yes, I think we can do it. So I said, well, come on in. Tell them you're with me. So all of a sudden, I see a table coming across, 2 guys carrying a table across the crowd, bringing it right down the front. You know, Shelley Berman would just tear people up. He was a big jokester. Played all the college circuits and all the nightclub circuits. Set the table down front. Then they're ushering these people in. By that time, the guy said there's probably 500 people waiting for the second show outside. Set them right down front. And that was my claim to fame on that trick. I got everybody in. I got about 20 of us in to see Shelley Berman, who was a big comedy name at that time. I always knew how to work, but it taught me the power of brotherhood, friendship. And we've had a bottle and a half of wine with my attorney and his wife, so we've had, but, and I've had that spirit with me forever. Bruce Walton, great guy. Bruce was from a little town outside of Wichita. You would never think that he could be the world's best furniture interior salesman, but he's a great guy. And he made millions of dollars because he was always trusted. Jack DeBoer bought every piece of furniture ever stuck in a hotel for Bruce.
Tell us about the fraternity house at 1740 North Mass.
Oh, it was a piece of shit. It started out, I pledged right after it was called the Pi Alpha Pi, the Dairy Queen. They used to make fun of it, you know. And, you know, right before I pledged, they added the chapter room and a kitchen. We used to have meals, a meal every noon. Monday night, had to cook. O.J. Whitmore, you've heard that story. Has somebody told you the story of O.J.?
Tell us.
O.J. Whitmore was a black lady, and Ralph Spurrier, I think, hired her, but I was the house manager then, so we had a meal every day. Monday night meal, we had beautiful, we ordered some dishes, I don't know whether they're still around here, yeah, right here. And we had beautiful meals. I remember one time we had the Tridels over and we had a pancake supper. And O.J. put on her Aunt Jemima outfit because she used to work for the Pillsbury. And she put on her Aunt Jemima, sit out in front, flip pancakes. And she was a lot of fun. Best fun, Dale Guard was a Pi Alpha. And we used to go borrow his Cadillac to pick up O.J. because she thought that was hot. And one year we had the national grand president here, we picked him up in it, but we picked up O.J. right along with him. She thought that was pretty hot. She rode in this Cadillac with the national chapter president. And so we had a lot of fun during that period of time. But we had meals every day, which I wish they could read. I've talked to some of the guys about it. Act some interest, you know. If we had an our dues, you had to talk us out of it. Really, if you couldn't make it, you had a job or a class or something. But we had great fun at noon. Watched TV, but we had a great time. There was always about 40, 50 guys around for lunch. But we had a good time. But there was always a sense of brotherhood, and I think that's what makes this so important. And you've been to all the national conclaves, you know, the SIGEPs believe the quality of men is better than the quantity, and I think that's pretty neat. Well, we're here, you know, believe it or not, we didn't have a cell phone. Now, I live on this thing, you know, I live on a cell phone. But we were just here, and that's why it was important everybody here be at lunch, because we didn't have a cell phone. And it was important, otherwise you never saw some of the guys. So, that was the communication.
Where did you live in college?
We had a dorm. I lived in an apartment over here that's now the Episcopal Center over here, but we had a dorm down on Fairmont. There was about 25 of us lived there. We had a boxer, a dog that was I was the keeper of the dog, and I had the first floor room, and if I didn't put my bedspread up, the damn dog laid in my bed, and of course he shed all over, you know. Some neighbor kid shot him in the balls with a BB gun, so the dog was sick for a week in my room. But we had a good time. Bill Otting took him home one summer and he got run over, so I remember that. But it was a great dog, and we like to have fun. The Fidels were next door. We'd take that dog and say, "Kill!" And man, he'd take off after those guys. And it's a big boxer, scared shit out of him, you know. But he would wind up and jump on him and lick him to death. So, we had a good time. We were I remember homecoming one day. We took second places, so we put a big purple pole in the front yard and said SIGEP's got the shaft. And we had that one year, but and we won Hippodrome. Don Rood, it's too bad he's not here. He was here to the 50th. Sarcastic son of a gun you ever saw, and he wrote all these stories. And we always won because we were so sarcastic. We just tore everybody up, you know. And intellectually sarcastic. The guy was brilliant, and so it was fun. I had a twin brother that was here, so both of us were SIGEPs.
What about the other fraternities? What do you remember about them?
Oh, we were so powerful then that we didn't kind of worry about the rest of them. The DUs, the house always, I thought, should have caught on fire. The Fidels were probably the number one. The Betas were a mess, but they just didn't understand what we had. It's the most important thing to furnishing your education in life. You know, college, if it doesn't teach you how to learn, I'm sorry, I got a cough. If college doesn't teach you how to learn, it's a waste of time. You're not learned up when you go to college. And that's what fraternity life does. Teach you how to learn. Yeah, you know, Bruce and I about 15 years ago, and I think it was the start of when the chapter turned around, we came in and rebuilt the chapter. Chuck Lindsay died, left us $10,000. I got to talk to him and leaving us $10,000. And then we got about $10,000 from the National, and a bunch of people put in some money. And we remodeled, if you remember, and so it wasn't quite so scary. I remember ripping up the stairway into the dorm, and you could hear the termites. So we just put the boards back and we're real nice to them, and decided that the only thing to do is to build another house. So you got involved, and we really went to town. But I think that I had a lot of pride in that, because it was kind of the start of I think, more involvement of alums and more excitement about building a house. My college experience, I think, enhanced my ability to make a living. I had 2 insurance agencies, and we had when I quit, we had about 35 employees that probably helped me quit. If I was going to go nuts, but the older you get, the less you have. But I still have the feeling of fraternity helped me keep my insurance agency going, because we all were a team in the agency.
What would you tell other alumni about being a volunteer?
Get involved. This chapter needs them. I've always felt that we should have an alumni, a mentor with each chapter officer. And I told him, I said, if I was here, I'm going to be the house manager. And we walked into some rooms, and see, I feel that if your room reflects your mind. If you can put up with a really crappy, filthy room, then your mind, I believe this so strongly, it's not a joke. Your mind is working the same way. And it's a harm to your ability to work smart. It's a harm to your ability to organize yourself in your life. And some of those rooms were just a mess. So if I came back, I would be a mentor to the house manager. I talked to the young man. He said that he's not allowed to go into the rooms. I said they need to change that rule, because some of these rooms are an embarrassment. And even some of the empty ones are full of crap. They need to be reorganized, because the house is just too beautiful to screw up.